Chapter 60, Invitation from Tony. Hosting a press conference. Yes, but first, I need to grab something to eat. I'm really craving a hamburger right now. Without explaining much to Pepper, Tony immediately instructed the driver to take him. Shortly after, at the press conference venue, Tony, eating a hamburger, casually walked in from the entrance, where the reporters from various major media outlets had been waiting for a while. Amidst the warm applause from the crowd, Tony stepped onto the stage. Hey, everyone, why don't you all take a seat? If you sit down, you can see me better, and it'll be more casual. Tony didn't go up to the podium but instead sat down casually under it, even inviting the reporters to sit down with him. The reporters smiled wryly in their hearts. Tony was not playing by the rules. However, in order to interview the playboy, they had to squat down in place for a better interview. Behind Tony, Obadiah Stannett, who was ready to speak, saw this and could only smile and shake his head, but he still had to sit down beside Tony on the floor. In fact, this Tony Stark attack was planned by Obadiah Stannett. Originally, his goal was to kill Tony and completely take control of Stark Industries. However, the unreliable employers, upon discovering Tony's true identity, didn't act as planned and tried to negotiate with him. Now that Tony had returned unharmed, Obadiah's mood was terrible, but on the surface, he had to pretend to be very concerned about Tony. Nice to see you. Me too. After sitting down, Tony smiled and greeted Obadiah. In Tony's heart, Obadiah Stannett was a respectable elder who had always taken good care of him. However, Tony could never have imagined that the person who really wanted to kill him was sitting right beside him, the elder who cared for him so much. Obadiah Stannett smiled in response and patted Tony's shoulder lightly, showing consolation. Then, Tony officially got to the point and continued speaking. I didn't get to see my father one last time. If possible, I would love to ask him about his views on producing weapons, whether there were conflicts or hesitations, or if he was as tough as the media reports said. At this point, Tony paused for a moment. I witnessed young soldiers being killed, dying under the very weapons I designed to protect them. I also realized that I am becoming part of this irresponsible world. So I woke up. I realized that I can contribute more to the world than just manufacturing weapons. Therefore, I have decided to close down Stark Industries' weapons division, effective immediately. Tony's words immediately caused a commotion among the reporters. The news was too shocking. If a major arms company like Stark Industries stopped producing weapons, what else could they do? Obadiah Stannett, who was on the side, changed his expression instantly. He couldn't understand what madness Tony was going through. Didn't he realize the huge impact this decision would have on the company? No matter how Obadiah tried to explain, the reporters were still discussing Tony's decision. Stark Industries, one of the largest arms manufacturers in the United States, stopping the production of weapons would undoubtedly have a huge impact. The press conference ended hastily, and the news of Tony's decision to close down the weapons division became the headline of major newspapers the next day. In Tony's luxurious seaside villa, he was busy upgrading his Iron Man armor. After escaping from captivity, Tony had plans to improve the Iron Man armor. The first version was made in a hurry, and some parts were made temporarily, so it wasn't perfect. As a genius scientist, Tony designed a completely new Iron Man armor in just a few days. The silver metallic surface was much more refined than the rough prototype he had made in the cave. Tony first installed the thrusters on his hands and feet and began to practice flying. Some things might be easy to imagine, but the actual practice was another matter. In the last version, Tony used thrusters to escape from the explosion, but he couldn't maintain balance in the air, couldn't control the direction, and even fell from the sky immediately. While Tony was practicing flying, the voice of the AI butler, Jarvis, suddenly echoed in the room. Sir, Stark Industries stocks have experienced an abnormal rebound. What happened? Somebody is heavily buying Stark Industries stocks, and the funds are from Stark Industries Fund, most likely your friend, Mr. Fang Ye. It seems my friend has great confidence in me. Tony had already anticipated that once he made the decision to close the weapons division, it would undoubtedly have a huge impact on Stark Industries. As he expected, in the past few days, Stark Industries stock had plummeted. Many shareholders were selling their stocks, including members of the board of directors, which greatly impacted Stark Industries. But Tony had confidence in reversing the situation. That's why he hadn't taken any action yet and was waiting for the right moment. Now it seemed that he might not need to act anymore, as Fang Ye's move had helped him solve a big problem. After all, Fang Ye's influence in the financial world was second to none. Oh, Stark Industries is holding a banquet? Wasn't I invited? There is no record of an invitation, sir. Tony suddenly saw on the television that Stark Industries was holding a banquet, but it seemed they hadn't invited him, the main character. He had been staying at home for a while recently, and rumors were circulating about his health condition, which was directly related to the sharp decline in Stark Industries stock. Tony pondered for a moment and smiled. It seems I should attend this banquet. And by the way, it's been a while since I last saw Fang Ye. Help me send him an invitation to attend the Stark Industries banquet. As you wish, sir. Tony had always followed the principle of doing things first and explaining later. After giving his instructions, he returned to his bedroom to change his clothes. He couldn't attend the banquet dressed like this. At the same time, in the office of the board of directors at UI Tower. Boss, you have an email. It's from Mr. Stark, inviting you to the banquet. Tony, Jennifer, reply and let him know I'll attend on time. After thinking for a moment, Fang Ye agreed to attend the banquet. He did want to see Tony again. Currently, Fang Ye held 13% of Stark Industries shares, including the original 3%. He was now the second largest shareholder, after Tony. Obadiah Stane only held 14% of the shares, and Fang Ye only needed to acquire a few more to become the second largest shareholder. The banquet was already underway, and Fang Ye didn't waste any time. He changed into a white formal suit and headed to the garage. After choosing a limited edition silver Osiris sports car from the garage, Fang Ye drove straight to the venue of the banquet, which happened to be a 5-star hotel under his management. Worth mentioning was that since successfully integrating the Hulk serum, Deadpool was no longer guarding him personally but secretly following and protecting him. With his space teleportation belt, Fang Ye wasn't worried about losing Deadpool. He stepped on the accelerator and raced to the venue. Chapter 61, Wolverine escaped. 6th Avenue in New York City, the Alvalli's Grand Hotel. Opposite the hotel's entrance, in the parking lot, luxury cars were parked, indicating the distinguished status of the guests attending the banquet. The Stark Industries banquet had gathered a multitude of business celebrities, not only from New York but also from wealthy businessmen from other regions. The Alvalli's chain of luxury hotels, built with a huge investment by Fang Ye, had now become one of the world's top hotels. The hotel's facilities were extremely luxurious, and it was equipped with top-notch security measures and personnel. Upon learning that Stark Industries was hosting a banquet today, the police had sent officers to maintain order and enhance security. Therefore, the wealthy attendees had no need to worry about any danger. The banquet hall was already bustling with activity. The buffet tables were filled with a variety of delicacies and wines. Even before the banquet officially began, many people were already engaged in conversations with each other. Mr. Stark is here. Someone suddenly called out, immediately attracting everyone's attention. At the entrance of the banquet hall, a luxurious top-tier sports car appeared, and after the car door opened, Tony leisurely stepped out. Tony was wearing a black suit, exuding an air of nobility and elegance. His confident smile added to his charm and temperament. Mr. Stark. Many people greeted Tony, and those who were farther away smiled and nodded in acknowledgement. Such scenes were already commonplace for Tony. He had grown used to being the center of attention wherever he went, receiving flattery from all around. Tony greeted those who greeted him with nods and smiles one by one. Although he was confident and even a bit arrogant, it didn't mean he lacked social skills or emotional intelligence. Beep, beep. While everyone's attention was on Tony, a top-tier limited edition luxury sports car appeared at the hotel's entrance. The sudden honking sound drew everyone's attention, and when they saw the person who arrived, everyone was instantly amazed. Mr. Fang Ye. If Tony's presence surprised the wealthy guests, then Fang Ye's arrival brought them pleasant surprises. It was because Fang Ye rarely attended banquets or gatherings with other wealthy individuals. This made it difficult for many people who wanted to get to know Fang Ye to have the opportunity. Seeing Fang Ye suddenly, they now had a chance to get to know him, and naturally, many people were pleasantly surprised. Although Fang Ye rarely appeared in public, he occasionally accepted interviews with TV reporters, and he had also been on the cover of Time magazine more than once. So, most of the people present recognized him. Those who were surrounding Tony went over to greet Fang Ye as well. In just a short moment, Fang Ye was surrounded by a group of people. Their attitude towards Fang Ye was much warmer compared to their treatment of Tony. Many of the wealthy attendees wanted to become members of UI Fund, but the threshold was too high, and some of their requirements couldn't be met. Fang Ye was dressed in a white suit, with a calm smile on his face. He nodded and smiled in response to the greetings. Tony, upon seeing Fang Ye's arrival, stopped at the entrance, waiting for him, and the two of them entered the banquet hall together. As they passed by some beautiful women, these women smiled or nodded in acknowledgement, and the two men maintained their calm smiles in response. In the eyes of these women, there was a trace of flirtatiousness. Faced with men like Fang Ye and Tony, who were still unmarried at this age, it was inevitable that some women would be interested. Hey, Fang, I regret inviting you. You stole my limelight as soon as you arrived. Although many women greeted him as well, Tony noticed that these women's gazes were mostly focused on Fang Ye. This made Tony, who considered himself charming, feel a bit unsettled. Naturally, Fang Ye understood that Tony was just joking, and he played along. Should I feel honored to make you regret it? Isn't that obvious? Well, I should indeed feel honored. By the way, shall we find a place to sit and talk? There's something I want to discuss with you. Sure. Fang Ye's proposal was not rejected by Tony, as Fang Ye was one of his few good friends. Fang Ye wanted to talk to Tony about his acquisition of Stark Industries shares, but he didn't want Tony to misunderstand his intentions. After all, Fang Ye had a history of absorbing Osborne Industries. However, Fang Ye's main intention was to gauge Tony's reaction and see if he could gather any useful information about the Iron Man armor. Although Fang Ye had thoughts about building his own Iron Man armor, he had never considered harming Tony. In the Marvel world, he was just a passerby and had few friends in this world, with Tony being the only one he got along with. This was because Tony and he were somewhat similar, especially when it came to dealing with emotions. Who could say that Tony was not faithful? Tony had only ever loved Pepper Potts throughout his life, but he liked to fool around outside. If it were any other woman, perhaps they would have left Tony long ago, but Pepper Potts chose to silently tolerate Tony. Pepper Potts was the closest person in Tony's life, illuminating his life, protecting him, and tidying up the messes for him, making his life orderly. Behind a successful man, there was always a woman silently supporting him, caring for him, and inspiring him to move forward. And undoubtedly, Pepper Potts was such a representative. In fact, many people envied Tony for having someone like Pepper Potts by his side, someone who loved him wholeheartedly and considered everything for him. Fang Ye was also envious of Tony in a similar way. He envied the presence of Pepper Potts by Tony's side. In the real world, there was also such a woman who silently supported him, cared for him, and encouraged him. Before getting married, Fang Ye did indeed have many women, but after getting married, he seldom went out for fun anymore. Moreover, he had promised her that Bermuda would be his last adventure, but little did he expect that he would be separated by two worlds after that. So Fang Ye wanted to return to the real world. Even though the cosmic cube had opened a spacetime tunnel, the chances of him returning to the real world were still very slim. However, for that tiny possibility, Fang Ye was willing to give it his all, even if it meant facing the world alone. Perhaps because of this similarity, Fang Ye felt that he could get along well with Tony and they had quite a few common topics. Although they had not known each other for long and rarely contacted each other, their relationship had always been very good. The two of them sat down in a corner of the living room, and others seemed to have noticed that they had something to discuss, so they tactfully refrained from interrupting. Tony, about my acquisition of Stark Industries shares, I suppose I can't hide it from you, but I hope you won't misunderstand. I don't have any ambition towards Stark Industries. I don't misunderstand because I know you're a smart person. Tony had a smile on his face as he raised his glass and gently clinked it with Fang Ye's. Also, I have to thank you for helping stabilize the stock market of Stark Industries. Otherwise, it would have been a bit troublesome for me to handle it myself. I'm also a shareholder of Stark Industries, right? Fang Ye smiled indifferently. Geniuses were often self-confident, and their pride surpassed that of ordinary people. Tony was undoubtedly a genius. To make him say thank you was indeed quite rare. Afterward, Fang Ye chatted with Tony, continuously guiding the conversation while trying to test the topic of the Iron Man armor. Unfortunately, Tony didn't take the bait, and after nearly half an hour of conversation, Fang Ye couldn't obtain any useful information from Tony. To avoid raising Tony's suspicion, he couldn't be too direct in his questioning. BZZ. Suddenly, Fang Ye felt his phone vibrating. He took out his phone and saw that it was a call from Shu Long. Without avoiding Tony, he answered the call. Boss, something's not right. Someone has escaped from the underground research room. Who escaped? Upon hearing this, Fang Ye's brows furrowed, and his tone became cold. Fang Ye was very confident in the security of the underground research room. How could someone possibly escape? Wolverine, Storm, and Scarlet Witch. These three people have been rescued by someone. Did you send people to pursue them? We've already sent people to pursue them, but we haven't received any news yet. It seems someone is helping them. I'll be back right away. You keep things under control. Understood. After hanging up the phone, Fang Ye's face darkened rapidly. Sitting opposite him, Tony noticed this change and couldn't help feeling worried. It was because, in the time he had known Fang Ye had always been calm and composed, rarely displaying emotions like he was doing now. Clearly, something big had happened. Fang, is there something wrong? Do you need my help? No need. I'll handle it myself. But it seems I can't accompany you today. I need to go back and deal with something. All right. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Don't let it affect your affairs. Go back quickly. Then I'll take my leave. Nodding to Tony, Fang Ye left the banquet hall. In such a public place, Fang Ye couldn't directly teleport. A/N, consider giving some power stones for this novel, Your support is my motivation. Chapter 62, Eliminating the Mole. After leaving the Alvali's Grand Hotel, Fang Ye found an empty street and teleported directly back to the Uni building. Once he returned to the office, Fang Ye immediately summoned S.H.I.E.L.D, Kakura, Dr. Konas, and others. At this moment, Fang Ye's face was grim. Although the strength of Wolverine and the others was not bad, he didn't put them in his eyes. However, the fact that Wolverine and the others escaped meant that the underground research facility had also been exposed. That was the reason that angered Fang Ye. S.H.I.E.L.D and the others didn't keep Fang Ye waiting for long. After a while, they arrived at the office. Boss, what happened exactly? With the security of the underground research facility, how did Wolverine and the others escape? Fang Ye coldly questioned S.H.I.E.L.D and the others. Except for S.H.I.E.L.D, Kakura, and Dr. Konas, who had normal expressions, couldn't help but look guilty. Because Fang Ye rarely got angry, let alone being so furious like he was now. Kakura struggled with his expression, hesitated to speak, and finally said, Boss, it was Jennifer's assistant. We initially thought it was your order. When we realized something was amiss, Wolverine and the others had already escaped. Jennifer. Fang Ye's brow furrowed. Could this be related to Jennifer? Usually, when Fang Ye had something to do, he would instruct Jennifer to handle it, and naturally, Jennifer couldn't handle everything herself, so she had her own assistant. Where is Jennifer now? Boss, Miss Jennifer is waiting outside now, S.H.I.E.L.D suddenly reported. Fang Ye had him control the situation. Currently, the Uni building was under lockdown, allowing people to enter but not to leave. Until Jennifer's innocence was cleared, she was being held by S.H.I.E.L.D. Fang Ye appreciated S.H.I.E.L.D's efficiency. Jennifer was his secretary, and their relationship was extraordinary. If it were an ordinary person, they might hesitate to treat her harshly, let alone controlling her like this. But S.H.I.E.L.D had no such scruples. Whatever Fang Ye asked him to do, he would carry out without question. Let her come in. Yes. After a while, S.H.I.E.L.D led Jennifer into the office. Fang Ye stared at Jennifer. At this moment, Jennifer's face showed a hint of worry, and she lacked her usual assertiveness. There was a trace of sadness in her eyes, probably feeling hurt because Fang Ye didn't trust her. Seeing this, Fang Ye softened a bit. He wasn't a heartless person. Jennifer had been with him for more than 2 years, and it was impossible for there to be no feelings between them. Do you have anything to say? I have nothing to say. Alice was my assistant, and I have an unshirkable responsibility for what happened. Jennifer didn't shirk responsibility but instead bravely admitted it. Fang Ye nodded, appreciating her attitude. He despised those who shifted blame onto others. As Jennifer said, regardless of whether she was involved in this matter or not, Alice was her subordinate, and she had an unshirkable responsibility. Fang Ye didn't dwell on this matter and turned to ask S.H.I.E.L.D how many people were involved in this matter. Besides Jennifer's assistant, there are quite a few others under suspicion. Those people have already been controlled by us, but a few key suspects have committed suicide. S.H.I.E.L.D's face was extremely grim. After discovering something was amiss, he immediately took control of the relevant personnel. However, he didn't expect that some of them would commit suicide while he wasn't paying attention. Committed suicide. Fang Ye's brows furrowed. If they killed themselves, wouldn't that break the lead? It seems that Uni Foundation needs a thorough cleanup. S.H.I.E.L.D, I leave this matter to you. Make sure to expose all the spies and agents hidden within the company. Yes. S.H.I.E.L.D respectfully agreed and handed over a list of suspected personnel, including the names of those who committed suicide. Fang Ye looked at the list and his expression turned ugly, especially seeing the names of those who had committed suicide. Some of them were very familiar. They were the subordinates he had entrusted with when Uni Foundation was just established. Because of this, it meant that even before he rose to power, there were people who sent undercover agents to spy on him. I wonder if it's S.H.I.E.L.D or Hydra, or perhaps some other force. It seems they're paying a lot of attention to me. They've been monitoring me since 2 years ago. Fang Ye coldly smiled inwardly, his eyes showing a hint of chill. Fang Ye was not the kind of person who couldn't share prosperity. He had treated those old subordinates who followed him sincerely. Now, most of them were in management positions and had substantial wealth, with many even being millionaires or even multimillionaires. He was ruthless toward enemies, but he treated his own people well. However, what surprised Fang Ye was that sincerity and kindness had brought betrayal in return. Is death the end of it all? Cut off all those traitors and feed them to the dogs. Yes. S.H.I.E.L.D didn't question right or wrong when it came to Fang Ye's orders. He simply followed through with them. Fang Ye's biggest hatred was betrayal, but he still had a moral bottom line. He didn't intend to harm the families of those betrayers because, in the end, everyone should bear their own responsibilities. Fang Ye waved his hand, signaling S.H.I.E.L.D and the others to leave, leaving only Jennifer behind. Jennifer, did you really have no involvement in this? Fang Ye's tone was low, seemingly asking Jennifer but also talking to himself. It wasn't that Fang Ye didn't trust Jennifer, but Jennifer knew many core secrets of UNI Foundation, and he couldn't take any chances. Boss, I had nothing to do with it. Alice was my assistant, and I bear the ultimate responsibility for her actions. Jennifer's expression was firm. She could tolerate being wronged by others, but if Fang Ye doubted her, she couldn't accept it. Fang Ye nodded, no longer discussing this topic. All right, I believe you, but in the future, be more careful in your hiring process. I don't want to see such a situation again. Understand? Yes. You can take the day off today. Go home and rest. Yes. After Jennifer left, Fang Ye picked up a newspaper, sat on the sofa, and read quietly. Time passed unknowingly. After about an hour, Deadpool suddenly appeared in front of him. Fang Ye raised his head, put down the newspaper, and looked at Deadpool. Wilson, is there something wrong? Nothing unusual, boss. Miss Jennifer left just like usual and went back to her apartment after work. Good. Fang Ye nodded, feeling inexplicably relieved. It wasn't that he didn't trust Jennifer, but Jennifer knew many core secrets of UNI Foundation, and he couldn't afford to be careless. However, this incident served as a warning to Fang Ye. He was ready to do a thorough cleanup. He believed that there were still many spies or agents lurking within UNI Foundation. UNI building had strong security, making it difficult for someone to infiltrate secretly. However, those spies or agents could join UNI Foundation through normal hiring procedures. After all, UNI Foundation couldn't avoid recruiting externally. Fang Ye waved his hand, and Deadpool understood what to do without a word. His figure disappeared silently. It seems some core research projects in the underground research facility need to be moved. If Wolverine and the others had escaped from the underground research facility, it meant that it had already been exposed. Fang Ye needed to take preventive measures. Fang Ye wasn't planning to establish another underground research facility. Although UNI Foundation was making a lot of money, it would still be challenging to support another one like that. Actually, the so-called underground research facility was more like a massive underground base. Chapter 63, Iron Man Armor. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. During this period, S.H.I.E.L.D was in charge and vigorously cleared out the undercover agents from various forces. In just 3 days, more than 30 spies and agents were exposed, including moles from S.H.I.E.L.D, Hydra, and AIM. Even the now-defunct Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters and disbanded Brotherhood of Mutants had undercover agents that were discovered. After S.H.I.E.L.D finished interrogating them, Fang Ye waved his hand, and all those undercover agents were secretly eliminated. Fang Ye had never been a soft-hearted person. Since they dared to infiltrate UNI Foundation, they should be prepared to be secretly eliminated if their mission failed. Boss, there was an unidentified flying object that flew over our building just now. Did you investigate what it was? In the top floor office of the UNI building, S.H.I.E.L.D was reporting to Fang Ye. The flying object was very small and too fast. We haven't been able to identify what it is yet, but it might be a military unmanned reconnaissance aircraft. Small in size and fast in speed. Fang Ye's heart suddenly moved, thinking of a possibility, and immediately gave orders. Lock onto the target with the satellite and send me several sets of photos. Yes. UNI Foundation had its own satellite, and in a moment, the target was locked, and several sets of blurry photos appeared on Fang Ye's desk. The photos were very blurry, probably due to the fast speed of the object. Only a vague red figure could be seen, which made Fang Ye more certain of his guess. It looks like the Iron Man armor. Tony must have perfected it and is currently conducting its maiden flight. Others might not guess it, but Fang Ye, who knew the plot, naturally speculated that it should be Tony conducting a test flight of the Iron Man armor. While the Iron Man armor was being perfected, Fang Ye thought of Mystique. Mystique had not been seen for a long time after accepting the mission. Even Fang Ye didn't know what she was doing at the moment. Was she already lurking beside Tony? In addition to the source code of the intelligent program, Fang Ye also instructed Mystique to steal the design plans for the Iron Man armor and the reactor. However, stealing these 3 things was not an easy task. Fang Ye wasn't sure if Mystique could complete the mission, but he had no other choice. Now it all depended on Mystique's abilities. At this moment, Jennifer knocked on the door and walked in, not caring that S.H.I.E.L.D was present, directly reporting to Fang Ye because she knew that S.H.I.E.L.D was Fang Ye's confidant. Boss, Stark Industries sent an email saying that they will hold a board meeting tomorrow noon. Board meeting tomorrow noon. Fang Ye didn't know what Tony was up to. After thinking for a moment, he took out his phone and called Tony. Fang Ye wanted to ask Tony if there was something important happening. If not, he didn't plan to attend the meeting. He had a lot of things to deal with lately, and he could just send a representative to the meeting. Tony, who was flying at high speed in the Iron Man armor, suddenly heard J.A.R.V.I.'s reminder. Sir, it's your phone call. Who's calling? It's your good friend, Mr. Fang Ye. Answer it. Jarvis connected the call as per Tony's instructions, and Tony teased, "Hey, Fang, it's not like you to call me so late. Aren't you supposed to be in the bedroom, having fun with those female models? Don't compare me to you. I'm not as promiscuous as you. I called you because I wanted to ask about the board meeting tomorrow." "Board meeting? I didn't say I was going to hold a board meeting. Who told you that? I don't know anything about it. Isn't it you who's going to hold the board meeting? I just received a notification." Fang Ye's brows furrowed. Suddenly, he thought of a possibility. In the original plot, Obadiah Stanae recruited many members of the board to go against Tony and signed an order to freeze Tony. It seems like Obadiah Stanae is planning to make a move against Tony. Since it wasn't Tony who wanted to hold the board meeting, then the only person with the authority to do so was Obadiah Stanae. Fang Ye was in the middle of his thoughts when Tony interrupted him. "Hey, Fang, are you still there?" "I'm here." Fang Ye snapped back to attention and immediately replied. Tony might also sense that something was different. After all, he was the chairman of the board, and if there was a board meeting, he should know about it. Besides, Tony also knew that apart from him, the only other person with the authority to call a board meeting was Obadiah Stanae. Anyway, regardless of the situation, Obadiah Stanae should inform him if he was going to hold a board meeting. Even if Tony didn't go, he would send Pepper Potts in his place. After all, the board meeting was not a trivial matter. "I'll find out about the board meeting later." "Okay, there's a lot of noise on your side. I'll hang up first. I'm driving around outside, you know, there will be some noise. I'm hanging up." Fang Ye disdainfully listened to Tony's nonsense and was not fooled. He knew that Tony was currently test flying the Iron Man armor. However, now that Tony knew about the board meeting, he should be prepared. He wouldn't end up in a near-death situation like in the original plot. After all, if Pepper Potts had not disobeyed Tony's orders and kept the old reactor as a gift for him, Tony would have been in serious danger. He wouldn't have had time to make a new reactor. Furthermore, since it wasn't Tony who wanted to hold the board meeting, Fang Ye didn't plan to attend. As for Obadiah Stanae's plan against Tony, Tony was already on high alert now, and Fang Ye believed that Tony, with his intelligence, should be able to handle it well. Fang Ye didn't want to interfere. If necessary, Fang Ye could still lend a hand, but as long as it didn't affect his plans, he was willing to help Tony. "Jennifer, I won't attend the board meeting at Stark Industries tomorrow. I'll send a representative." Jennifer nodded. She was well versed in handling such matters, and in the past, she had been the one making such arrangements. Fang Ye waved his hand, saying, "If there's nothing else, both of you can leave." "Yes." Jennifer and Shillong acknowledged and left, with Jennifer carefully closing the door behind her. Chapter 64, Unexpected Incident. For several consecutive days, everything was calm and peaceful, and there was no news from Stark Industries. However, no news is good news. It means that the Black Widow's infiltration was highly successful, and she hadn't been discovered. On Tony's side, it was the same. It indicated that Obadiah Stanae's plot to go against Tony had failed. In the original storyline, Obadiah succeeded because Tony trusted him deeply and never anticipated his betrayal. This time, Tony was vigilant, and Obadiah had no chance to seize power. At the UXZ building, in the office of the directors. At this moment, Fang Ye was signing documents when suddenly his phone vibrated. He picked it up and found that it was a call from Tony. "Fang, come out and have a drink with me. I'm feeling down." "No problem." Fang Ye didn't even think about it and immediately agreed. He could understand Tony's mood. When someone he had regarded as a mentor betrayed him and was even the mastermind behind the assassination plot, it's natural that his mood would be affected. After finishing the last document, Fang Ye handed it to Jennifer and instructed her, "Jennifer, I've signed the documents. The rest is up to you. I'm going out for a while." Yes. There weren't many affairs in UXZ Foundation, but after the acquisition of Osborne Industries, Fang Ye had been less relaxed. There were many things he needed to handle every day. Fang Ye went to the changing room and put on casual clothes before heading to the bar. Naturally, he couldn't wear something too formal, as he wasn't attending a formal event. Near Plaza Park, on New York's 6th Avenue, there was a high-end bar called Annis. The booming music in the bar was ear-piercing, capable of bursting eardrums. Seductive beauties with revealing clothing and ample bosoms danced wildly among handsome and muscular men. People who came to bars like this were seeking relaxation or pleasure. They wanted to numb themselves with alcohol and be immersed in the music, seeking excitement and release, trying to vent their work pressures and life troubles. It was a place favored by wealthy single women, as well as rich women, mistresses, and kept women. They came here to look for prey, to find someone who could satisfy their physical desires and temporarily fill the emptiness in their lives. "It's been a while since I came here." Yeah. Two men walked into the bar, and they were quite well known in the United States. While not everyone might recognize them, they were a rare sight. So when they came to relax, they needed to disguise themselves. After they entered the bar, they found a secluded corner to sit down. Fang Ye didn't bring bodyguards, only Deadpool hiding in the shadows, while Tony had quite a few bodyguards, but he had dispersed them around, guarding him from different positions. Waiter, bring us 2 glasses of Scotch whiskey. Sure, sir, please wait a moment. Fang Ye called the waiter over and ordered 2 glasses of whiskey that matched their taste. However, he suddenly noticed Tony's gaze was fixed on a woman sitting in the corner. The woman had smooth and tender skin like dripping water, a beautiful face, full and perky breasts, a slim and curvy waist, and long, slender legs. She was undoubtedly a beauty, but her eyes were dull, and her face was filled with sorrow. She drank alone, ignoring the clamor around her. Many handsome men tried to talk to her, but she didn't even lift her eyelids. Hey, Fang, that blonde beauty is quite something. How about we have a competition to see who can win her over? Didn't you say you were feeling down and wanted me to accompany you? Fang Ye's mouth twitched. How could Tony still have the appetite for such things when he said he was feeling down? Truly, old habits die hard. Fang Ye occasionally visited bars for relaxation, but not every time for sex. He saw women differently. In this world, as long as you had money and power, women were there for the taking. Fang Ye once saw a news story in the real world about a man in the West who had married over 130 wives, fathered over 200 children, and had more than 1,800 grandchildren. According to his eldest son, there were probably more children outside. Sometimes, reality could be more outrageous than fiction. Tony had heard of the risks associated with human enhancement drugs, but he didn't seem interested. Instead, he focused on his Iron Man armor. After all, Tony was a scientific genius. While Iron Man armor was great in its early stages, it only became truly powerful in its later stages, allowing Tony to match the Hulk in strength and even hold his own in a fight against him. As they drank more and more, Tony began to show signs of drunkenness and talked more. He even complained to Fang Ye. It turned out that Tony had been vigilant and, after some investigation, discovered that Obadiah Stana was the mastermind behind his kidnapping and assassination attempt. Tony had a deep emotional connection with Obadiah Stana. After his father's death, Obadiah had taken on a fatherly role for Tony and had always taken good care of him. Now, Tony found out that Obadiah was trying to get rid of him to take control of Stark Industries. In the end, Tony managed to send Obadiah to prison. The evidence was enough to keep him there for the rest of his life. Considering Obadiah's advanced age, he probably wouldn't live to see freedom. Fang Ye didn't know how to console Tony, so he could only accompany him in drinking. Due to the human enhancement drug injection, Fang Ye was immune to alcohol, so he didn't feel any effects even after drinking a lot. Seeing Tony passed out on the table, Fang Ye gestured to his bodyguards, and they came over. Take Tony back, and be careful on the way. Yes. Although these were Tony's bodyguards, they didn't dare act presumptuously in front of Fang Ye and treated him with utmost respect. Fang Ye was about to teleport back when he suddenly felt his phone vibrating. Boss, something bad happened to Osborne Industries. Something happened? Jennifer, tell me slowly, what exactly happened? Fang Ye's tone was calm, neither panicked nor flustered. After Jennifer reported, Fang Ye understood the situation. A certain electrical engineer named Max Wei-Dian had an accident and was electrocuted while on duty. Max Wei-Dian. Fang Ye suddenly felt that the name was somewhat familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before. Electro. After pondering for a moment, Fang Ye suddenly remembered. Max Wei-Dian was the Electro, one of Spider-Man's arch-enemies. Chapter 65, Electro. Jennifer, has the information been blocked? After a brief pause, Fang Ye suddenly inquired. Naturally, there should be a news blackout regarding the accident at Oscorp Industries, and the media should not be allowed to report it extensively. The information has been blocked, and the body has been sent to the crematorium. Very well, I'll be back to handle it immediately. Fang Ye hung up the phone and disappeared from the bar in an instant. Due to the dim lights and the crowd in the bar, no one noticed Fang Ye's sudden disappearance. Damn it! I haven't finished my drink yet, and I wasted hundreds of dollars. After Fang Ye teleported away, in a dark corner not far away, Deadpool, who had been secretly protecting him, couldn't help but put down his glass and disappeared along with him. Fang Ye reappeared in his office, where Jennifer was already waiting. Taking off his coat, Fang Ye instructed Jennifer, call Shu Long and ask him to lead 3 super soldiers to accompany me. I have something to tell them to do. Yes. Following his orders, Jennifer made the call to Shu Long and got them ready. Electro was a troublemaker, and his strength was quite impressive. Fang Ye's goal was to subdue him, and if that wasn't possible, he would have to deal with the problem. In Times Square, New York City. In this bustling area, skyscrapers surrounded the place, and the neon lights illuminated the night. During rush hour in the evening, countless pedestrians came here for shopping and leisure. However, tonight was destined to be extraordinary. In the crowd, a person dressed in grey clothes and a cap on his head was walking slowly. Initially, due to the cap, which concealed his appearance, and a physique similar to an ordinary person, he didn't attract the attention of the people around him. But upon closer observation, one could notice that his semi-transparent skin revealed faint blue veins pulsating like a flow of electric currents, proving that he was not a normal human being. This person was Max Dillon, also known as Electro, the electrical engineer who died in the accident at Oscorp Industries. Max's eyes moved back and forth as if he was searching for something. In Max's eyes, his world was different from that of ordinary people. He could see flowing electric currents, and he felt very weak, as if he had been starving for a long time, leaving him exhausted. Suddenly, Max took action. He seemed to have found his target and pushed through the crowd, heading towards the center of the square. He opened a protective fence and knelt down, grabbing the buried cable in the ground. AHH. Max let out a comfortable groan, feeling like his whole body was expanding. A tremendous power was brewing inside him, and that feeling of immense strength made him intoxicated. Max's unusual behavior caught the attention of nearby pedestrians, and when they saw his appearance, they panicked and ran away. At the police station, this is Times Square. I need backup. A patrolling police officer nearby also noticed Max's abnormal behavior. However, the experienced officer didn't rush to stop Max immediately. Instead, he first evacuated the surrounding crowd before slowly approaching Max. Sir, take your hands off the cable and raise them. The police officer drew his gun and sternly warned Max. Feeling scared, Max instinctively retreated, quickly moving back to the middle of the road. But suddenly, a truck was approaching from the opposite direction. Due to the sudden brake, the wheels of the truck violently rubbed against the asphalt, producing a screeching sound like a trapped beast screaming in pain. The large truck was heading straight towards Max apparently. Max's sudden appearance in the middle of the road caught the truck driver off guard, and it was too late to brake. Seeing the truck about to collide with Max, he instinctively used his hands to protect himself. At that moment, powerful electrical currents surged from Max's outstretched hands, hitting the oncoming truck. The entire truck seemed to be wrapped in an electric net. What a powerful feeling. Max suddenly felt that he could easily lift the truck. This sensation drove Max to take action. With the truck weighing several tons under his control, Max raised it over his head and threw it away. This shocking scene frightened the crowd, causing chaos as people screamed and fled in all directions. The police officers who had arrived immediately after the incident, seeing the scene before them, drew their guns and aimed at Max. Don't move, raise your hands. Stop, lie down. Although Max had undergone a significant change in power, facing numerous police officers and guns, he still felt anxious and confused. Retreating in panic, Max cried out, "No, please don't do this. It's not my fault." However, the police ignored him and threw several smoke bombs at his feet, enveloping Max in smoke. Such actions angered Max. Stop. With a furious roar, a surge of electric energy spread in all directions, sending the surrounding police officers and 7 or 8 police cars flying. Meanwhile, Spider-Man Peter Parker had already taken off his outer clothes, revealing his Spider-Man costume underneath. He first rescued several police officers, and when he was about to stop Max, he suddenly looked up at the sky. In the sky, 4 figures with gliders and wearing Green Goblin suits were flying towards them. The Green Goblins. Peter Parker was taken aback. He was familiar with the Green Goblin suits. Although they were still some distance away, he recognized them at first glance. Dealing with one Green Goblin was enough for him, but now there were suddenly 4, leaving Peter Parker feeling extremely worried. Moreover, in the center of the square, there was a guy who could control electric currents, waiting for him to handle the situation. Don't be nervous. Suddenly, a person appeared next to Peter Parker. It was precisely Fang Ye, who had teleported over. Peter Parker was shocked. Someone suddenly appeared beside him, and his spider sense hadn't warned him in advance, which was almost impossible. However, it was happening right now. Turning his head, Peter Parker saw a familiar face before him. Mr. Fang. Peter Parker's feelings towards Fang Ye were complicated. Initially, he had a good impression of him, but after the last incident, his feelings towards Fang Ye changed. However, Peter Parker didn't regret saving Fang Ye. Shu Long and the 3 super soldiers descended from the sky and hovered around Fang Ye, but their gazes were fixed on Max. Because they all knew that their target this time was Max, and Fang Ye had explained this on the way. Chapter 66, Hypnosis Brainwashing. Shu Long and the others descended with an imposing aura, attracting the attention of many people. Not only did they garner attention but also instilled fear, especially after the Green Devil massacre not long ago. The memory was still fresh in the minds of New York citizens. Furthermore, Max was currently on a killing spree. Screams and cries for help resonated throughout Times Square. Looking up, Fang Ye saw Max floating in midair, arcs of electricity shooting from his hands, ruthlessly slaughtering innocent civilians. In just a short moment, dozens of citizens fell victim to him. Damn it! Peter Parker didn't expect Max to be so insane, killing innocent civilians without hesitation. He couldn't just sit still and wanted to intervene to stop Max. But Fang Ye acted quickly and grabbed Peter Parker, while giving instructions to S.H.I.E.L.D and the others. Capture him alive. Yes. S.H.I.E.L.D and the others respectfully responded, using their gliding wings to fly towards Max. At the same time, Fang Ye activated the weakening magnetic field function. Max's ability was to control currents, and his body had undergone mutations, making him like a huge capacitor emitting a bioelectromagnetic field. With the weakening magnetic field function, Fang Ye effectively nullified Max's power. Seeing Fang Ye preventing him from saving people, Peter Parker's expression wasn't pleasant. Fang Ye seemed indifferent to civilian casualties, but Peter couldn't be like that. Suddenly, Peter Parker had a thought. Fang Ye's appearance seemed too coincidental, as if he knew something was going to happen here. Could the electricity-wielding man in front of him have something to do with Fang Ye? Mr. Fang, what's the deal with that electricity-wielding man? It was an accident at Osborn Industries, and he became an accidental product, gaining the power to control electricity through a physical mutation. Fang Ye replied calmly, not hiding anything from Peter Parker. He was grateful to Peter Parker because if it wasn't for him helping last time, he might have ended up captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm going to save people. Peter Parker didn't say much more as S.H.I.E.L.D and the others were busy capturing Max and had no time to attend to civilian casualties. Many civilians were affected by the battle between the two sides. Due to the weakening magnetic field function, Max's power was significantly diminished, and with the combined effort of S.H.I.E.L.D and the other 4 super warriors, Max was quickly brought under control. Take him away. Fang Ye instructed S.H.I.E.L.D, and his figure disappeared instantly. Meanwhile, the 4 super warriors led Max away and flew into the sky. Their figures grew smaller until they disappeared with a blink of an eye, leaving behind a devastated square and a complex expression on Peter Parker's face. He sighed inwardly. Shooting a web, his figure also disappeared from Times Square. In a corner of Times Square, a special agent watched S.H.I.E.L.D and the others fly away with Max, then quietly made a phone call. Director, the mutant has been taken away. Taken away? By whom? The voice of Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D, came through the phone. In fact, when the chaos erupted in Times Square, it was immediately captured by S.H.I.E.L.D's surveillance personnel through satellites and reported to Nick Fury. Nick Fury quickly made a judgment and dispatched agents near Times Square. His orders were to control the mutants, and if possible, recruit them into S.H.I.E.L.D. Since the confrontations with Fang Ye several times and having suffered losses, Nick Fury realized that S.H.I.E.L.D's strength needed to be strengthened. Recently, Nick Fury had been trying to recruit various superheroes, but it was not easy to persuade these rebellious heroes to join. Director, they are from the UEI Foundation, and Fang Ye was also present. I see, you can withdraw. Nick Fury's tone was calm, showing no emotional fluctuations, as if he didn't care about this matter at all. But was Nick Fury really indifferent? That was impossible. He just didn't want to clash with Fang Ye for the time being. UEI Building, Training Room. After returning to the UEI Building, Fang Ye immediately called Kakala, and soon S.H.I.E.L.D and the others flew back, bringing Max to the training room. Who are you people? Let me go. Max struggled fiercely, but his limbs were already immobilized by special equipment, and his power to control electricity was restricted, making it impossible for him to resist. Fang Ye didn't pay any attention to Max. His gaze fell on Kakala, and Kakala understood and stepped forward. Kakala stood in front of Max and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his pupils had turned blue, and an invisible ripple spread out. Max's emotions immediately stabilized, and he stopped struggling or speaking, his expression becoming somewhat blank. What's your name? Max. Who is your master? Master, who is my master? Max sounded full of doubt, as if he was contemplating the question, his face showing a fierce expression, and his emotions became somewhat excited. Kakala's blue pupils spread another invisible ripple, stabilizing Max's emotions again. Your master is Mr. Fang. Yes? My master is Mr. Fang. Your master is Mr. Fang. Yes? My master is Mr. Fang. With each repetition, Max's expression became more determined, and a hint of fanaticism appeared in his eyes. Kakala's hypnotic brainwashing ability wasn't like Wanda's power to alter memories, he could only guide others during hypnosis, just like instilling beliefs in them. Thus, taming someone couldn't be achieved in a short time. Kakala needed to hypnotize and brainwash Max multiple times. Kakala had been very busy lately, as there were over 200 mutants that needed his brainwashing. Fang Ye was well aware of this, but currently, Kakala was the only one among his subordinates who possessed such an ability. Fang Ye lost interest in watching and nodded to S.H.I.E.L.D before teleporting back to his office. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. As soon as Fang Ye returned to his office, he heard knocking on the door. Dr. Connors walked in, holding a document with a hint of delight on his face, indicating that he had made some breakthrough in his research. Boss, we've made progress in researching the green giant's genetic defect. Oh. Fang Ye's face showed a trace of joy. Even though he successfully fused with the green giant serum, the green giant gene was not perfect. Once he unleashed his anger, it would overwhelm his rationality, gradually forming a second personality. Fang Ye had instructed Dr. Connors to research the green giant's genetic defect, aiming to perfect the green giant gene. But he didn't expect to see progress so quickly. Show me the report. Sure. Dr. Connors respectfully handed over the report. As Fang Ye read through the report, his expression alternated between joy and concern, his mood changing constantly. T/N, the next plot will introduce the appearance of the Tesseract, the competition among various forces, and the attack on S.H.I.E.L.D. Chapter 67, Vital Material. As Fang Ye continued reading the report, his expression changed constantly, alternating between joy and worry. Perfecting the Hulk's genetic defect was indeed a possibility, but the implementation was extremely difficult. Even if Fang Ye was willing to spare no expense, it couldn't be achieved in a short time. But Fang Ye was already prepared to excavate the Tesseract, and now he didn't have time to wait. He could postpone the excavation for a few more years, but the longer he waited, the greater the likelihood of the plan going awry. According to the research in the report, the improvement of the Hulk's genes could indeed be achieved by absorbing two substances, CPH4 and CNV6. These two substances, named CPH4 and CNV6, were secreted in small amounts by the mother during the 6th week of pregnancy. After refining these two substances, they could be fused into a miraculous material. In reality, Fang Ye had seen a movie called Lucy, which also mentioned the CPH4 substance. CPH4 and CNV6 were both magical substances secreted in small amounts during pregnancy, with one acting on brain development and giving human intelligence, and the other acting on fetal development, giving human life. In Fang Ye's understanding, the refinement and fusion of these two substances could be referred to as the vital material. The vital material contained life force, it was the source of life. To improve the Hulk's genes or promote their evolution, he needed to absorb a large amount of vital material. But where could he get so much vital material? The vital material Fang Ye needed was not a pound or two, perhaps it would be more appropriate to calculate it in tons. Without affecting the growth of the fetus, extracting a tiny amount of CPH4 and CNV6 from each pregnant woman and refining it into vital material would yield a maximum weight of only 1 milligram. In other words, by refining 1,000 pregnant women, he would obtain only 1 gram of vital material. Refining 1,000,000 pregnant women would yield only 1 kilogram, and to promote the evolution of the Hulk's genes, he needed vital material in tons. By what year or month would he be able to extract enough vital material? If Fang Ye had time and didn't mind waiting, it would be feasible, but the key was that the excavation of the Tesseract was imminent, and Fang Ye simply didn't have the time to wait. CPH4 and CNV6 are based on the setting in the movie Lucy, but the substance CPH4 is not as extreme as portrayed in the movie, and it's merely borrowed for this story, as two different drugs. Dr. Connors, let's temporarily put aside the project of refining CPH4 and CNV6 substances. Yes. Fang Ye sighed inwardly. Although he wanted to start the project right away and refine the CPH4 and CNV6 substances, he had to consider the practical situation and temporarily put the project aside. Because once the project started, it would consume a terrifying amount of funding, even the UE fund would have a hard time sustaining it. Most importantly, no one knew how many years it would take to refine enough vital material, and Fang Ye didn't have the time to wait anymore. But at least he had figured out a way to promote the evolution of the Hulk's genes. If the plan went smoothly, he could refine the vital material slowly after returning to the real world. You may leave now. Leave the report here with me. Yes. Dr. Connors didn't dare to object and respectfully complied, then exited the office. After Dr. Connors left, Fang Ye carefully reviewed the report. He needed to remember the method of refining vital material. The best place to keep this information was in his memory. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, all the mutants had been completely brainwashed by Kakara. In the training room at UI Tower, Fang Ye stood with his hands behind his back, overlooking hundreds of mutants below. Looking at Fang Ye on the stage, the mutants' eyes revealed a fanatical look. Under Kakara's brainwashing, Fang Ye had become their only faith. Boss. The voices of over 200 mutants sounded in perfect unison, as if they had undergone strict rehearsals. Fang Ye remained indifferent and nodded slowly. Then, his gaze swept to the mutants in the first row. The ones who stood there were undoubtedly the strongest. Among these mutants, Fang Ye recognized many familiar faces. For example, standing in the front row were Fireman, Iceman, Saber-Tooth Tiger, Nightcrawler, Death Girl, The Maker, Angel, Multiple Man, Golem, Arclight, and other mutants with decent strength. If their strength was classified according to mutant levels, these mutants were undoubtedly all above level 3. However, the classification of mutant levels was merely an internal division among mutants, and in the entire Marvel Universe, there was no clear ranking of strengths. S.H.I.E.L.D. Here. Beside the mutants, S.H.I.E.L.D. and Kokora stood in the front row, while behind them were 9 super soldiers and Max, who had already been brainwashed. Deadpool, on the other hand, was like Fang Ye's shadow, silently standing behind Fang Ye. It could be said that Fang Ye's subordinates had truly gathered together for the first time. With such a formidable force, even the chances of successfully raiding a military base were extremely high. Prepare to excavate the Tesseract. Yes. With the mutants under control, Fang Ye's power had grown, and now he had the confidence to excavate the Tesseract. Even if S.H.I.E.L.D, Hellfire, and Hydra came to cause trouble, Fang Ye was confident that he could deal with them. As for the matter of the Tesseract, S.H.I.E.L.D. had known about it all along. If you ask who Fang Ye trusts the most in the Marvel world, I can tell you clearly that it's not Jennifer, not Dr. Connors, but the always low-key S.H.I.E.L.D. Wilson, you and the 9 super soldiers will stay at UEI Tower. S.H.I.E.L.D, lead the others to the sea area to excavate the Tesseract. Yes. Fang Ye decided to leave Deadpool and the 9 super soldiers behind, while the others would head to the sea area to ensure the safety of the Tesseract. After everything was arranged, Fang Ye teleported back to his office and dialed a phone number. General Coben, it's Fang Ye. The owner of the phone was Kurt Coben, one of the 3 top members of the UE Fund and the highest commander of the U.S. Central Command. The division of the U.S. military districts was different from that of other countries. They divided their forces into 5 combatant commands: Northern Command, Southern Command, Pacific Command, European Command, and Central Command, spread across different continents. The U.S. military also established 9 unified combatant commands, divided into geographically based combatant commands and functionally based functional commands. Fang Ye needed a warship to excavate the Tesseract, so he had to rely on Kurt Coben's connections. Otherwise, even with all his money, he wouldn't be able to get a warship. After chatting with Kurt Coben for a while, Fang Ye got straight to the point and explained the situation. Kurt Coben was quite generous and promised that tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, a warship would appear near New York in a certain sea area, claiming to be on patrol. At that time, Fang Ye could send someone to take over the ship. From this point on, everything was prepared. Chapter 68, Excavating the Tesseract. The azure sea water reflected the blue sky, and the calm sea surface occasionally had seagulls flying by. A warship sailed on the sea, heading towards the vast and boundless sea area, its propellers creating layers of white waves, propelling the warship like a sharp arrow, breaking through the sea and leaving the New York harbor. Fang Ye stood with his hands behind his back, silently gazing ahead, his expression extremely tranquil. His eyes seemed half-closed, but his hair was ruffled by the sea breeze, fluttering and making a rustling sound. At this moment, S.H.I.E.L.D. approached and whispered in Fang Ye's ear, "Boss, we'll arrive at our destination in 5 minutes. Fang Ye lightly responded, opening his slightly closed eyes and exhaling a breath. This wasn't Fang Ye's first time at sea. He had taken many cruises in the real world before, and the last time he had embarked on an adventure to Bermuda, he had unexpectedly arrived in the Marvel world. Recalling the scene of the shipwreck from earlier, if he had his current power at that time, perhaps he wouldn't have ended up in the Marvel world. "Let's go to the bridge." "Yes," S.H.I.E.L.D. replied but didn't move, remaining in place. Fang Ye turned around and noticed that S.H.I.E.L.D. seemed hesitant, as if he had something to say. Fang Ye held S.H.I.E.L.D. in high regard and had even planned to leave the management of the UEI Fund to him when he returned to the real world, assuming the plan went smoothly. Jennifer might have the ability, but she wasn't capable enough to handle the UEI Fund and Osborne Industries. In the end, Fang Ye would give her a sum of money, and the same would go for those kept women, ensuring they had a worry-free life. That wouldn't be unfair treatment to them. Seeing S.H.I.E.L.D.'s appearance, Fang Ye couldn't help but feel curious. "Do you have something else to say?" "Boss, I want to leave with you." S.H.I.E.L.D. took a deep breath and expressed his thoughts. He didn't know where Fang Ye was going, but he could sense that once Fang Ye obtained the Tesseract, he might leave. Fang Ye remained unchanged, neither happy nor sad, gazing silently at S.H.I.E.L.D. "Why? In this world, I have nothing to tie me down. My family is all dead, and my life belongs to you, boss. Wherever you go, I'm willing to follow." "All right, I'll take you with me." "Thank you, boss." Normally, S.H.I.E.L.D. had a cold and indifferent face, as if he had a permanent case of facial paralysis and never showed any smile. But at this moment, a faint smile appeared on his face. Seeing this, Fang Ye gave a faint smile in return and turned to walk towards the bridge of the warship. S.H.I.E.L.D quickly followed behind him. Originally, in Fang Ye's plan, he didn't intend to take anyone with him to the real world. After all, even if he opened the space-time tunnel, it might not lead to the real world, it could be another world. The reason Fang Ye didn't plan to bring anyone along was that there was no one in this world worth him cherishing. However, since S.H.I.E.L.D wanted to follow, then so be it. Having a few capable subordinates by his side wasn't a bad thing. Furthermore, traversing the space-time tunnel didn't seem to pose any danger. After all, when Fang Ye had come through, he was an ordinary person and hadn't encountered any problems. Mr. Fang Ye, welcome. Inside the bridge of the warship, upon seeing Fang Ye's arrival, the captain and crew quickly greeted him. Fang Ye ignored them and walked straight to the electronic nautical chart. He saw that the warship had indeed arrived at its destination. However, Fang Ye couldn't be certain about the exact coordinates where Captain America and the Tesseract fell. He only had a rough range. If he knew the precise location, they wouldn't need to spend so much effort searching. Stop the warship and explore in all directions centered here. Yes. Actually, the crew and the captain were not Fang Ye's subordinates, they were under Kurt Cobain's command. Perhaps Kurt Cobain wasn't entirely at ease, so he didn't completely hand over the warship to Fang Ye. Instead, he dispatched his trusted subordinates to assist Fang Ye. In name, they were to help Fang Ye navigate the warship. Fang Ye was well aware of this but didn't mind. It was even better this way, he didn't want to go through the trouble of finding people himself. After all, there weren't many people capable of operating a warship, and finding them would be a big hassle. In addition, Kurt Cobain only knew that Fang Ye seemed to be digging for something, but he had no idea what it was. The Tesseract was a matter of great importance, and Fang Ye hadn't disclosed any information about it. At Fang Ye's command, the exploration energy device was activated, and 20 underwater exploration robots were deployed. The exploration energy device was a type of energy exploration device capable of detecting all energy fluctuations within a 10-mile radius. As long as the Tesseract was nearby, its location could be detected. The 20 underwater exploration robots were theoretically capable of diving to a depth of 10,000 meters, making them crucial tools for excavating the Tesseract. These robots also carried night vision cameras, allowing Fang Ye to see the underwater scenery through the robots. Mr. Fang Ye, everything is ready now. We're just waiting for news. By the way, I don't know, Mr. Fang Ye, what exactly are you looking for? If we don't know what you're looking for, we won't be able to help you explore, right? Fang Ye didn't respond to the captain, or rather, the commander of the warship. Instead, he turned his gaze to S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D understood and left the bridge. He directly instructed the saber-toothed tiger to activate the signal shield device. Once the signal shield was activated, the warship would lose contact with the military headquarters. The soldiers on the warship, including the 200 mutants, could overwhelm the captain and the crew in an instant. The signal shield had its advantages and disadvantages. Once the warship lost contact with the military, it would undoubtedly alarm them. A warship disappearing for no reason would be hard for even Kurt Cobain to suppress. However, Kurt Cobain had also promised that he could buy Fang Ye 3 hours. After 3 hours, the military would undoubtedly mobilize a search. Therefore, Fang Ye had to find the Tesseract within 3 hours, before the military arrived. We have found someone. Oh. Upon hearing the news, Fang Ye approached and, through the camera of the underwater exploration robot, could vaguely see a humanoid creature encased in ice inside a glacier. Fang Ye's heart rejoiced. Although he couldn't see the person's face, the clothes he wore were exactly the same as Captain America's. There was no doubt that it was Captain America. Since Captain America had been found, the Tesseract must be nearby. However, Fang Ye suddenly felt a headache. How should he deal with Captain America? Should he just leave him sleeping like this? If it were any other superhero, Fang Ye might not care and let them continue to sleep. But when it came to Captain America, Fang Ye admired him quite a bit. Fang Ye often said that no one was perfect, but Steve Rogers, Captain America, was the person closest to perfection. The super soldier serum also had its flaws. It could amplify a person's personality, making good people even better and bad people even worse. If there was anyone in the entire Marvel world who represented justice the most, it would undoubtedly be Steve Rogers, Captain America. Dig him out. Understood. There was no harm in digging out Captain America. However, Fang Ye didn't want to add an enemy to himself. So, Fang Ye had a plan. After digging out Captain America, he would find another icy chamber and freeze Captain America there. Once Fang Ye found the Tesseract and left the Marvel world through the space-time tunnel, he could release Captain America. By then, it wouldn't be his concern anymore. Even if Captain America was recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D, it wouldn't affect Fang Ye. A/N, in the movie, at this time, the Tesseract is already with S.H.I.E.L.D, but for the sake of the plot, the emergence of the Tesseract has been delayed. Chapter 69, Freezing Captain America. After the commander issued the command, 3 underwater exploration robots moved towards the glacier and commenced excavation to retrieve the body trapped within the ice. To others, the body appeared to have been frozen for many years, and it was impossible for the person to still be alive. Among all the people present, perhaps only Fang Ye would think that this might be Captain America. If Fang Ye didn't know, he probably wouldn't have believed that someone could revive after being frozen for nearly 70 years. This was almost a miracle. Through the camera on the underwater exploration robot, Captain America's figure appeared on the large screen in the cockpit. This body looks somewhat familiar. Seeing the familiar attire of the body, the commander murmured to himself. Captain America was famous worldwide, and the commander naturally knew who he was. However, for a moment, he hadn't thought in that direction. The robots were digging at a fast speed, and the person was excavated in less than half an hour. Afterwards, the robot carried Captain America back to the warship. Not long after, Fang Ye finally saw Captain America. Captain America appeared very young, with blonde hair and a chiseled face. He wore the red, white, and blue star-spangled outfit and a mask that covered half of his face. The only regret for Fang Ye was that he didn't see the famous vibranium shield. The vibranium shield possessed incredible vibration properties, capable of emitting oscillations of specific frequencies. In terms of defense alone, the vibranium shield was unparalleled in the entire Marvel world. Captain America. When the robot carried Captain America onto the warship, the commander finally recognized who the person before him was. Fang Ye smiled indifferently and walked to Captain America's side, carefully examining him. Indeed, it is Captain America. However, the current Captain America was still frozen in ice and wouldn't wake up until he was thawed. Before Captain America woke up, Fang Ye planned to find another ice chamber and freeze him again. With Captain America's personality, the chance of successfully persuading him to join was too slim. Moreover, Kakula's hypnotic ability had little effect on individuals with strong wills like Captain America. Otherwise, Fang Ye wouldn't mind hypnotizing and brainwashing Captain America, gaining a formidable force on his side. Quick, contact headquarters and inform them that we have excavated Captain America. No need to contact them. Fang Ye shook his head lightly, stopping the commander. The commander's expression tightened, looking somewhat unpleasant. Did the situation that General Coben was worried about finally happen? What do you mean, Mr. Fang Ye? No need to be nervous. I have no ill intentions. However, within a 10-kilometer radius around here, I have blocked the signal. You cannot contact the outside world right now. This was agreed upon between General Coben and me, and I believe you should be aware of it. Then, I'll follow Mr. Fang Ye's instructions. The commander relaxed his expression upon hearing this. General Coben did indeed mention this matter, but the excitement of excavating Captain America momentarily made him forget. Seeing that the commander understood the situation, Fang Ye smiled and nodded. In his plan to excavate the Tesseract, Fang Ye couldn't allow any unexpected incidents. If the commander didn't comply, he wouldn't mind throwing him into the sea to feed the fish. Buzz. Suddenly, Fang Ye frowned, feeling his pocket vibrating. He took out his phone and saw that it was Jennifer calling. The signal was blocked within 10 kilometers of the warship, and the only phone that could still contact the outside world was Fang Ye's. However, Fang Ye had already instructed not to disturb him unless it was something urgent. Now, Jennifer was calling, which made Fang Ye's heart sink. Could something have happened to S.H.I.E.L.D? Jennifer was always very sensible and wouldn't bother him at this time if it wasn't something urgent. Boss, something's not right with S.H.I.E.L.D. You better come back immediately. What happened? You know I have something important to deal with outside and can't leave at the moment. S.H.I.E.L.D has been frozen. I can't explain it over the phone. You should come back immediately. I'll be back right away. In the end, Fang Ye decided to make a trip back. After all, teleportation was very convenient and wouldn't delay much time. Glancing at Captain America, Fang Ye pondered for a moment and decided to take him back as well. He planned to freeze Captain America again after they arrived and found another ice chamber. Fang Ye summoned S.H.I.E.L.D and instructed him, "You will be in charge here for the time being. I need to make a quick trip back. I'll be back within an hour at most. Don't cause any trouble in the meantime. My phone is left to you. If there's anything, contact me through Jennifer's phone." Yes. S.H.I.E.L.D respectfully accepted Fang Ye's phone. Fang Ye nodded. The place was not far from New York City, and with teleportation, he could return quickly if anything happened. After quickly handling everything, Fang Ye made a few phone calls to deal with the situation of S.H.I.E.L.D being frozen. Buzz. Jennifer suddenly felt her phone vibrating and saw that the caller ID displayed Fang Ye's name. Jennifer's expression became complicated, but in the end, she gritted her teeth and hung up the call, setting her phone to silent mode. No one knew about this. After hanging up the call, Jennifer quietly made another call. "Director, the mission has been completed." "Good. I will immediately send someone to block the signals around S.H.I.E.L.D, Chapter 70, Luring the Tiger Away from the Mountain. S.H.I.E.L.D. Headquarters, Director's Office. After receiving a phone call, Nick Fury immediately ordered his subordinates to block the signals around the UXE building and its surrounding area. He was worried that S.H.I.E.L.D. might not be able to contact Jennifer and would then try to contact others in the UXE building. He had gone to great lengths to lure S.H.I.E.L.D. away, and it was not easy to finally deceive Fang Ye and bring him back. He didn't want to ruin everything at the critical moment. Fang Ye, you probably didn't expect this. A cold smile appeared on Nick Fury's face. S.H.I.E.L.D. had clashed with Fang Ye many times before, but they always came out at a disadvantage. This time, they finally turned the tables. Indeed, Jennifer was a high-level agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Actually, even before Fang Ye rose to power, Nick Fury had noticed him and attached great importance to his ability to accumulate wealth. Therefore, he sent a high-level agent, Jennifer, to infiltrate Fang Ye's side. Jennifer didn't disappoint Nick Fury. Among the many applicants, she stood out and won Fang Ye's favor and trust. Over the past 2 years, Jennifer had gathered valuable intelligence for S.H.I.E.L.D. Originally, Nick Fury had intended to win Fang Ye over, but later he discovered that Fang Ye would not join any faction. Therefore, Jennifer continued to stay undercover until the time came to rescue Wolverine and others, and Nick Fury finally played his hidden card, Jennifer. That's why Nick Fury had the confidence to assure Phoenix that he could save Wolverine and the others, relying on Jennifer's position in the UEI Foundation. The difficult part was how to do it without exposing Jennifer's identity as a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. They should be arriving soon. Nick Fury checked the time and a cold expression appeared on his face. In fact, a year ago, Nick Fury already knew about Fang Ye's plan. After all, Fang Ye had not hidden anything from Jennifer, and she was responsible for all the preparatory work. Although Nick Fury didn't know exactly what Fang Ye was excavating, he could tell that Fang Ye attached great importance to it. Anything that caught Fang Ye's attention was worth S.H.I.E.L.D.'s attention. In addition, Nick Fury had considered using Jennifer to steal the Hulk's blood serum and human enhancement potions, but Fang Ye's interest in the Hulk's blood serum made it impossible for Jennifer to seize any opportunities. In the end, S.H.I.E.L.D. had no choice but to resort to force, but they failed to obtain the human enhancement potions and suffered losses at Fang Ye's hands several times. Meanwhile, at the UXE building, in the director's office, suddenly, Fang Ye felt a bit uneasy, as if something bad was about to happen. But Fang Ye's precognition ability was not omnipotent. Although he sensed that something bad was going to happen, he couldn't predict exactly what it was. Besides, the sense of danger was not strong enough to threaten his safety, otherwise, Fang Ye would have transformed already. What could it be? Is something wrong with S.H.I.E.L.D. over there? After the warning from his precognition ability, Fang Ye immediately thought that something might have happened to S.H.I.E.L.D. However, S.H.I.E.L.D. was always reliable and if something had happened, he would have been the first to call and inform him. Jennifer. Boss. As soon as Fang Ye called, Jennifer entered the room. Jennifer, did S.H.I.E.L.D. call you? No. Why, boss? Are you looking for him? Do you want me to call him now? No need. Fang Ye shook his head. Since S.H.I.E.L.D. hadn't called, there shouldn't be any problem. But Fang Ye had a vague feeling that Jennifer was acting strangely today, although he couldn't put his finger on exactly what it was. It was as if Jennifer was hiding something from him. Do you have something to hide from me? Fang Ye stared at Jennifer with a slightly solemn tone, hoping to find out if she was really hiding something from him. Jennifer's expression froze for a moment, and a hint of panic flashed in her eyes. Though it was only a brief moment, Fang Ye caught it. Fang Ye's heart sank and his tone turned cold. Speak up. Boss, I'm pregnant. Fang Ye's body trembled at her words, and all his doubts disappeared instantly. Fang Ye leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples. When did it happen? It's been 2 months. You should rest for now. After I finish my work, I'll take you to the hospital. Yes. Jennifer replied softly and left the office. At this moment, Jennifer's mood was complicated. After 2 years of being with this man, she had truly fallen in love with him. Unfortunately, life was unpredictable, and sometimes people had no control over their circumstances. I'm sorry. Jennifer sighed inwardly. The pregnancy was, of course, a lie, just an excuse to keep Fang Ye occupied. She knew that Fang Ye was a clever man, and it was almost impossible to keep anything from him, so she had already prepared the excuse in advance. After 2 years of being with Fang Ye, she had come to understand his character, and although he would resort to any means necessary, he was not completely heartless. He couldn't sever all emotional ties. While Fang Ye was in distress, outside the New York harbor, a Kun-style fighter jet flew in circles, followed by a warship. All warships below, please be advised to stop for inspection immediately. Please be advised to stop for inspection. Trouble. After trying to make 2 calls, both of which went unanswered, and realizing that he couldn't get through anymore, plus the sudden appearance of the fighter jet, S.H.I.E.L.D. knew that something had gone wrong. However, He wasn't worried about Fang Ye's safety. In this world, no one could kill the green giant. Moreover, with Fang Ye's sensing ability, he wasn't afraid of being caught off guard. The interior space of the Kun-style fighter jet was spacious enough to accommodate more than a dozen people. Among them were many people whom Shi-Long recognized, such as Norman Osborn, Wolverine, Storm, etc. But the most eye-catching figure was undoubtedly the man with orange rock-like skin, who was none other than Ben Grimm from the Fantastic Four. And the Fantastic Four never separated. Since Ben Grimm appeared, it meant that Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, and Human Torch were also present. They were all brought in by S.H.I.E.L.D. to help. As for Norman Osborn, his situation seemed quite normal at the moment. Originally, when they captured Norman Osborn, S.H.I.E.L.D. was disappointed because he was almost insane and it was almost impossible to rely on him to research the human enhancement potions. Fortunately, later Phoenix intervened and used her psychic abilities to suppress Norman Osborn's evil. Chapter 71, Dark Phoenix. Everyone, prepare for battle. Yes. In fact, there was no need for Shi-Long to remind them, they could all see the fighter jets flying in the sky. Long before the fighter jets arrived, the mutants were already prepared for battle. Shi-Long wore the green demon war armor and looked up at the fighter jets in the sky, a fierce glint flashing in his eyes. He turned back to the cockpit and immediately summoned the commander. Launch the missiles immediately and shoot down that fighter jet in the sky, do you understand? But the commander hesitated visibly. After all, the fighter jet clearly belonged to S.H.I.E.L.D. The Kun-style fighter jets were not widely used in the military, only S.H.I.E.L.D. had them. It could be said that they were exclusive to S.H.I.E.L.D. So, as the trusted aide to the highest commander of the Central Command, he naturally couldn't pretend to be unaware. Precisely because of this, he dared not agree. If it led to a conflict between S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Central Command, General Kurt Cobain would never let him off the hook. A cold look flashed in Shi-Long's eyes, and he grabbed the commander's collar, lifting him off the ground. No buts? Unless you want to be thrown into the sea to feed the fish. Then, I'll just have to find your deputy. I believe he would be more than willing to follow my orders. Cough, Mr. Shi-Long, please don't be impulsive. So, do you agree then? I agree, I will immediately order the launch of the anti-aircraft missiles. The commander was out of breath, and seeing the cold gleam in Shi-Long's eyes and feeling the murderous aura emanating from him, the commander knew that Shi-Long wasn't joking. If he didn't agree, he would undoubtedly be thrown into the sea to feed the fish. Therefore, he couldn't afford to act tough. Shi-Long let go of the commander, who didn't dare to delay and quickly ordered the launch of the missiles. Shoo, shoo. 2 anti-aircraft missiles shot out, turning into 2 fire dragons in the air, heading straight for the fighter jet above. If it weren't for the quick reaction of the fighter jet's pilot, the plane would have been blown to pieces by now. Agent Coulson, I've told you before, there's no need to be polite to those criminals. You see, I was right, weren't I? Johnny, shut up. Okay, pretend I didn't say anything. The character of Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, was unruly and free-spirited. He did things his own way and had a very strong personality. Only towards his sister, the Invisible Woman, did he show respect and fear. If it were anyone else, Johnny would probably not pay them any attention, but he wouldn't dare argue with his sister. Humph. X-Men Academy was destroyed because of Shi-Long. I've been wanting to take revenge on him. Shi-Long took over my family's company. I will never coexist with him. Let's attack. Shi-Long killed my father. I must take his life. Wolverine, Norman Osborn, Scarlet Witch, and others all spoke up, demanding to join the battle immediately. Agent Phil Coulson saw that everyone was volunteering, and could only nod in agreement. All right then, but I hope you all can end the battle as quickly as possible. We don't have much time. But before Coulson finished speaking, when the fighter jet flew over the warship, everyone jumped down one after another. Coulson helplessly shook his head. These people were all very strong, but they lacked discipline. He even began to doubt whether the plan to form the Avengers with them would really succeed. It was not easy to assemble this group of free-spirited superheroes into a disciplined team. As soon as the Fantastic Four, Wolverine, Scarlet Witch, Storm, and the others landed on the warship, the big battle began. Fire, ice, lightning, and white light spread and covered the entire ship. The Thing, Ben Grimm, was the most ferocious. He had immense strength and defense, making him almost impervious to the attacks of the mutants. He roamed through the crowd, freely slaughtering the mutants. Anyone hit by him was either seriously injured or killed on the spot. I am the most powerful fire manipulator. You'll have to compare to know. Apart from the immense strength and fierceness of the Thing, the others were not to be underestimated. But the most eye-catching was the battle between the Human Torch and Pyro. Both of them had fire manipulation abilities, and in their battle, flames covered the sky, affecting many mutants in the vicinity. There were also Wolverine fighting Sabretooth. Both had extremely strong regenerative abilities, and their fights were the most brutal. The S.H.I.E.L.D. side had quite a number of powerful individuals: Fantastic Four, Wolverine, Norman Osborn, Scarlet Witch, Storm, and Jean Grey, among others. However, the strength of the Fang Ye Fund side was not weak either. Human Torch, Iceman, Sabretooth, Nightcrawler, Mystique, Forge, Angel, Multiple Man, Goliath, Havoc, among others. In addition, there were S.H.I.E.L.D and Electro, and also had the advantage of numbers. The S.H.I.E.L.D. side was being overwhelmed by the UI Fund side. Oh no, I didn't expect S.H.I.E.L.D to be so cautious and arrange so many people here. Agent Coulson inwardly exclaimed. If this continued, there was no way the battle would end quickly. If Fang Ye arrived, they would have no chance of winning. Ms. Grey, it's up to you now. Coulson didn't have to worry about it. Jean Grey didn't disappoint him. Seeing that their side was being overwhelmed, Jean Grey let out a sharp scream, accompanied by a powerful shockwave that spread in all directions from her position. Everyone and everything around her were blown away by the sudden shockwave. What's happening? Oh, Jean is losing control. Those who were knocked away didn't understand what was happening. However, some people saw Jean Grey's appearance and immediately understood what had happened. For example, Wolverine, Logan, knew that Jean Grey had unleashed her second personality, the Dark Phoenix. Many other mutants who had been in the X-Men Academy knew the situation as well. They were well aware of the power of Jean Grey's second personality, the Dark Phoenix. If it truly erupted, it would be a disaster, and there was no one here who could match her. Don't forget our agreement. Don't worry, since I've promised you, I will definitely do it. In Jean Grey's mind, two consciousnesses communicated with each other. Seeing that the Dark Phoenix had agreed, Jean Grey's primary personality fell into a deep sleep, and Jean Grey's aura suddenly changed. Originally clad in black leather, the appearance of Jean Grey seemed particularly cold under the influence of this aura. The Dark Phoenix was Jean Grey's second personality, but she had been locked away in Jean Grey's mind by Professor X since she was very young. She had slept as the second personality ever since. The Dark Phoenix was full of negative emotions, characterized by desire, violence, and anger. That was also the reason why Professor X had sealed her. Giggle, it's been so long since I last woke up. It's time to come out and play. Chapter 72, Death. It's been a long time since I came out for some fresh air. Dark Phoenix looked around, her eyes filled with desires, violence, anger, and various other emotions. With each step she took, nearby mutants were either controlled and suspended in midair or disintegrated into ashes. No mutant could stop her advance. Dark Phoenix possessed many abilities, including telepathy and telekinesis, but her most formidable power was undoubtedly her ability to disintegrate matter. In theory, she could disintegrate anything. Save me. Many mutants cried out for help before meeting their end, but they could only watch helplessly as their bodies were disintegrated until they vanished into ashes. Dark Phoenix's power was unquestionably immense. Even in the entire Marvel Universe, she was one of the most powerful beings. Not even Magneto or Professor X, if they were still alive, could match her. With her joining the battle, the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. gained a significant advantage. On the other hand, the people from the Uni Fund found themselves in deep trouble. In just a moment, dozens of them fell at the hands of Dark Phoenix. Not good. During his fight with Norman Osborn, S.H.I.E.L.D had been keeping an eye on the surroundings. When he saw Dark Phoenix dominating the battlefield, his heart sank. Jean Grey's second personality, Dark Phoenix, had been mentioned in the Uni Fund's intelligence database. S.H.I.E.L.D was well aware of just how terrifying she could be. Perhaps Fang Ye could withstand her, but none of the mutants present stood a chance against Dark Phoenix. Haha, do you dare to be distracted during our battle? Norman Osborn smirked fiercely as he punched S.H.I.E.L.D, sending him flying. Humph. S.H.I.E.L.D stabilized himself and coldly snorted. Their physical abilities were similar, but S.H.I.E.L.D possessed lizard genes, granting him powerful regenerative abilities. While their attack power was comparable, Norman Osborn couldn't match S.H.I.E.L.D's endurance. We found it? We found. Suddenly, a voice came from the cockpit. S.H.I.E.L.D turned to look, and his heart sank as he saw that they had found the Tesseract. A robot climbed onto the warship from the sea, holding an energy cube in its hand, none other than the famous Tesseract. Tesseract. Agent Coulson on the fighter jet showed a pleased expression. Now he finally knew what Fang Ye was after. The information about the Tesseract was on file at S.H.I.E.L.D, and Coulson naturally knew what it was. However, during World War II, the Tesseract had been lost in the vast ocean. Over the years, S.H.I.E.L.D had been searching for it, but searching the vast oceans was no easy task. How could they explore all 4 oceans? After all, when Captain America's plane lost contact with headquarters, they could only roughly determine where it had crashed. Changed this part. In the original, they could roughly determine the crash site before the plane lost contact with headquarters, but in this version, the plane loses contact from the very beginning, and the military doesn't know where Captain America crashed. Phil Coulson picked up the intercom and requested assistance from all his people. Everyone, that energy cube is the Tesseract, an item lost by S.H.I.E.L.D. many years ago. It holds great significance for the United States, and we must not let it slip away. Please retrieve it. Understood. Mimic was the first to respond. After shaking off the mutants that were bothering her, she slowly disappeared, stealthily approaching the Tesseract. Others also tried to break free from their opponents and rushed towards the Tesseract. They could hear the urgency in Coulson's voice, which meant the Tesseract was indeed crucial. Of course, not everyone was unfamiliar with the Tesseract. Some had heard of its name before. On the side of S.H.I.E.L.D., while they were trying to seize the Tesseract, Shu-Long immediately issued an order for the mutants to guard it. Iceman, Sabretooth, Deathbird. You guys assist Nightcrawler in guarding the Tesseract. Nightcrawler, as soon as you get the Tesseract, use your teleportation to leave immediately. You must personally hand it over to the boss, do you understand? Yes. Shu-Long knew how much Fang Ye valued the Tesseract. Even if they were all wiped out in this battle, they couldn't afford to lose it. The battle between the two sides intensified further, and over 80 mutants had already died in the fierce fighting. Most of them had fallen at the hands of Dark Phoenix. Storm, Wolverine, and the others didn't look good. After all, many of those mutants had been their students. But they couldn't stop those mutants who willingly sought death. It was Shu-Long's strategy to stall Dark Phoenix. Since nobody could deal with her, they had to sacrifice their lives to delay her. Hey, buddy, put down the Tesseract. As Sabretooth reached out to grab the Tesseract, Pyro immediately controlled a flame and swept towards him. Pyro's flames were scorching hot, forcing Sabretooth to dodge. Damn it, your opponent is me. At that moment, Human Torch also arrived. Both he and Pyro were fire manipulators, and they were evenly matched. Neither could defeat the other easily. A figure suddenly appeared in front of the Tesseract and reached out to grab it. Just as it seemed Nightcrawler would obtain the Tesseract, he was suddenly sent flying as if hit by something. Then, Invisible Woman gradually became visible. It turned out she had quietly approached and kicked Nightcrawler away as he tried to grab the Tesseract. However, Invisible Woman didn't get the Tesseract either as she was blocked by Deathbird. In this way, they were all caught in a stalemate. The longer the battle dragged on, the more unfavorable it became for their side. Thankfully, Black Phoenix finally arrived, which relieved Coulson. A powerful shockwave emanated from Black Phoenix, sending all the mutants attacking her flying. Anyone who tried to impede her was ruthlessly disintegrated into ashes. Not good. Shu-Long urgently tried to intervene, enduring a blow from Norman Osborn to free himself from his entanglement. He then flew towards Black Phoenix, attempting to intercept her path. The Tesseract absolutely couldn't be lost, it was the task given to him by the boss. Even though he knew he was no match for Black Phoenix, Shu-Long rushed forward without hesitation. Seeking death. Black Phoenix sneered, using her telekinesis to immobilize Shu-Long in midair. Long felt his body suddenly unable to move. Soon, his body started to disintegrate. Even though he possessed super regenerative abilities, he couldn't resist Black Phoenix's disintegration power. Boss, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I can only repay your great kindness in my next life. As his body disintegrated, even his glider was similarly turned into ashes, as if this person had never existed in the world. Chapter 73. I will attack S.H.I.E.L.D. The Dark Phoenix's power was unmatched. Anyone who tried to stop her was crushed by her ability to disintegrate matter. Approaching the Tesseract, the Dark Phoenix extended her pure white hand and firmly grasped the Tesseract, intimidating everyone around, as no one dared to take a step closer. Her immense power was evident. I have fulfilled my promise to you. Her lustrous hair danced as a hint of a smile played on her lips, adding to her allure. She had made an agreement with the Mastermind, who released her. As part of the deal, she promised 2 conditions to the Mastermind. The first condition was to assist S.H.I.E.L.D., and now, she dominated the scene, helping S.H.I.E.L.D. obtain the Tesseract. It was considered completing the first condition. The second condition was to kill Fang Ye, seeking revenge for Professor X and Cyclops. The only regret the Dark Phoenix had was that Fang Ye was not present. Otherwise, she would have loved to encounter him. She knew Professor X's strength, and if Fang Ye could kill him, he must possess extraordinary power. On a fighter jet flying in the sky, Phil Coulson's face showed a hint of joy as he witnessed the Phoenix claiming the Tesseract. However, as his eyes inadvertently glanced at the radar display, his smile turned into shock. Oh no, it's missiles! Coulson exclaimed, intending to inform the people on the carrier. But the communication devices were rendered useless due to signal jammers placed on the carrier. Left with no choice, Coulson had the pilot lower the altitude while he used a loudspeaker to shout to those below. We have incoming missiles. Evacuate quickly. Hearing Carlson's warning, both sides were startled. They paused their battle and gazed at the distant horizon. 3 red dots were rapidly approaching their carrier. The individuals with flight abilities took their loved ones and friends and flew away, while those who couldn't fly looked crestfallen because they had no time to evacuate before the missiles arrived. They could only await death on the carrier. Though they were mutants with superior abilities compared to ordinary humans, facing the missiles was like sheep facing the slaughter. Humph. At that moment, the Dark Phoenix coldly snorted and flew into the sky, heading directly towards the 3 missiles. A whirlwind seemed to rise around the Dark Phoenix as the 3 missiles closed in. Their speed dropped instantly, and they disintegrated into dust at a visible speed. Hiss. Many people gasped in shock. They knew the Dark Phoenix was formidable, but they didn't expect her to be this terrifying. In her hands, the 3 missiles were like toys, easily disintegrated by her. This showed just how fearsome her ability to disintegrate matter was. Huff. Carlson also broke into a cold sweat. If it weren't for the Phoenix's intervention, only half of the people he brought here would have survived. Simultaneously, a glint of coldness flashed in Carlson's eyes. Clearly, someone intended to eliminate them all. Who could be so ruthless? If Fang Ye were here, he would undoubtedly be the prime suspect for such a merciless attack. Hydra had long infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D, and Carlson's leading a group of superheroes on such a massive scale would undoubtedly attract Hydra's attention. Of course, it was only suspicion, as it could also be the work of other forces unknown. At U.Yi Building, in the director's office. After dealing with the frozen assets of U.Yi Foundation, Fang Ye couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Resolving this matter had come at a considerable cost to the Foundation. As he raised his wine glass, his hand faltered because he once again felt uneasy. Something unfavorable had definitely happened? Could something really be wrong with S.H.I.E.L.D? Fang Ye never doubted his precognitive ability, as it had never let him down before. Looking at his watch, an hour had passed. Fang Ye decided to return to the carrier to check the situation. As for accompanying Jennifer to the hospital, that could wait. Fang Ye's figure vanished in an instant. After several teleports, he arrived back on the carrier. However, he found the carrier in ruins, with traces of flames, ice, and storms everywhere. It was evident that a major battle had occurred here. What angered Fang Ye the most was the severe casualties among the mutants. Out of the over 200 mutants, only slightly more than 100 remained, almost half of them injured or dead. What happened? Boss, it was S.H.I.E.L.D. They took the Tesseract, and many of us died in the battle. Even Lord S.H.I.E.L.D, he's dead too. Fang Ye's sudden appearance startled the mutants, but when they recognized him, they breathed a sigh of relief. The Tesseract was stolen, and S.H.I.E.L.D was dead. Fury burned in Fang Ye's heart. Not long ago, S.H.I.E.L.D said he wanted to follow Fang Ye and leave the Marvel world. His words still echoed in Fang Ye's ears, but little did he know that his return would result in a permanent farewell. Tell me everything. Sure. The Fang Ye didn't dare to hide anything. He neither exaggerated nor fabricated the facts, telling Fang Ye everything that happened after he left. Dark Phoenix. S.H.I.E.L.D. Fang Ye murmured, his eyes revealing a strong killing intent. A chilling aura spread from his body, causing the nearby mutants to shiver. Fang Ye knew about the Dark Phoenix's power, and if she was behind this, the mutants present wouldn't stand a chance. However, obtaining the Tesseract was imperative for Fang Ye. Since S.H.I.E.L.D had taken it, he would get it back. Return to the base. I'm going to attack S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes. Yes, Fang Ye would attack S.H.I.E.L.D, not just for avenging his subordinates, but also to reclaim the Tesseract. There was no reason for Fang Ye to retreat. However, S.H.I.E.L.D was a government agency, and attacking it required careful planning. First, the U.Yi Foundation would withdraw its investments. The headquarters couldn't stay in the United States any longer. In addition to the mutants they needed to recruit more mutants or supercriminals. Although the Marvel world might lack some things, it certainly didn't lack superheroes and, consequently, supercriminals. As Fang Ye prepared to leave, he suddenly noticed a cell phone lying quietly in the corner. He naturally recognized his own phone and realized it was the one he had given to S.H.I.E.L.D before leaving. Fang Ye approached, picked up the phone, and found that it was intact despite the intense battle. Perhaps during the fight, S.H.I.E.L.D accidentally dropped it. Fang Ye unlocked the phone and checked the call records. His expression turned grim. Jennifer. He found that 2 calls had been made to Jennifer, but she hadn't reported anything to him. Considering Jennifer's unusual behavior today and the unfortunate incident with U.Yi, Fang Ye had no doubt that Jennifer had betrayed him. It wouldn't have been easy to deceive Fang Ye, as he had been suspicious at the time. If it weren't for the unexpected news of Jennifer's pregnancy, things might not have turned out like this. Access to the database. Looks like Jennifer intentionally leaked it. Fang Ye's eyes flickered with cold light. He hated traitors the most in his life. Chapter 74, Dr. Octopus. Fang Ye surveyed the surroundings and found that the war had taken its toll on the warships, leaving them in ruins. The soldiers suffered heavy casualties, and the commander's condition was critical. He could die at any moment, but they couldn't return without him. None of the mutants present knew how to operate the warships. Kunbit, go and heal them. The warship still needs them to steer. Yes. Kunbit's strength among the mutants was only average, but his ability was unique. Similar to the priests in Western legends, he could emit holy light to heal injuries. It was because of his unique ability that Fang Ye remembered his name. Among the over 200 mutants, Fang Ye only remembered the names of a few dozen individuals. Kunbit approached the commander, and a sacred and solemn white light spread from within him. With a flick of his finger, a stream of holy light merged into the commander's body. The commander's injuries began to visibly recover at a rapid pace. Subsequently, he healed the other soldiers. As long as they hadn't died on the spot, they all quickly recovered under the healing of the holy light. However, Kunbit's ability was not all-powerful. While it was incredibly effective in healing ordinary people, it had no such effect on healing mutants. When the commander regained consciousness, he saw Fang Ye standing beside him and opened his mouth, intending to explain something. Mr. Fang Ye, no need to explain anything. I don't want to hear any excuses. Your current task is to return to base as quickly as possible. Fang Ye didn't want to hear any explanations, as the theft of the cosmic cube had nothing to do with the commander. The commander breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing Fang Ye's words. As long as Fang Ye didn't blame him, it was enough. Afterward, the commander gave the order to return, and Fang Ye directly teleported away. After a while, Fang Ye returned to the Yi building. Wilson, boss. Deadpool's figure slowly appeared, but his expression didn't look good at the moment. Fang Ye had asked him to stay at the Yi building, and the theft of the data had resulted in Deadpool having undeniable responsibility. Have a seat. Fang Ye gestured to the sofa across from him. He didn't blame Deadpool too much since the leakage of the data was due to Jennifer's intentional action, which Deadpool couldn't prevent. This was the price to pay for being a hands-off boss. If Fang Ye had been more cautious and meticulous, then he wouldn't be facing the current situation. However, it also meant that Fang Ye didn't need to deal with many other matters. For many years, Jennifer had been in charge of managing the Foundation and Osborne Industries. While commercial secrets might have leaked, Fang Ye had always kept the core secrets in the underground research facility away from her reach. However, betrayal always came at a price. Where is Jennifer? Miss Jennifer left half an hour ago. She should have returned to her apartment. It's unlikely she's at her apartment. Go check, and if she's there, bring her over. Yes. The chance of Jennifer being at her apartment was slim, but Fang Ye still sent Deadpool to check, hoping for the best. Soon after, Deadpool teleported back, confirming Fang Ye's suspicion. Boss, she's not there. Understood. Spread the word that if anyone finds Jennifer's whereabouts, dead or alive, bring her back to me. Yes. Fang Ye waved his hand, dismissing Deadpool. For the next half-month, Fang Ye started transferring assets. Since they were planning to attack S.H.I.E.L.D, they were undoubtedly going to clash with the US government. Despite the significant influence of Yi Foundation, they couldn't compete with the US government. In fact, Fang Ye didn't value Yi Foundation too much. Originally, the foundation was established solely to amass wealth, which was necessary to carry out his plans better. Now that the Hulk serum had been successfully integrated, and they had found the cosmic cube, the existence of Yi Foundation no longer mattered as long as they retrieved the cosmic cube from S.H.I.E.L.D. However, the Yi Foundation had been 2 years of effort, and Fang Ye didn't want to benefit the US government easily, so it was necessary to transfer the assets. During the half-month, the Yi Foundation quietly withdrew its investments from the US, and the Yi building became an empty shell. The underground research facility had also been relocated and rebuilt on one of Fang Ye's private islands. Fang Ye had many private islands around the world, and the new underground research facility was located on a deserted island in Asia. At the same time, the headquarters of Yi Foundation was also moved to Asia. Everything is ready. It's time for S.H.I.E.L.D to pay the price. On the balcony of the Seaview Villa on the private island, Fang Ye lay on a chair. He had already handled all the matters that needed to be dealt with. Additionally, half a month ago, he had instructed S.H.I.E.L.D and the mutants to recruit other mutants. However, Fang Ye's recruitment didn't only target mutants, it also included supervillains. The task of recruiting supervillains was assigned to Electro, Max Dillon. Max. Boss. Suddenly, a burst of electric light appeared opposite Fang Ye, forming a humanoid figure. Now, Max Dillon could fully transform his body into electricity, and his strength had greatly increased. Fang Ye glanced at Max Dillon and asked in a low voice, "How is the recruitment of supervillains going?" "We have already recruited 6 people. However, we encountered some trouble yesterday with a person known as Dr. Octopus. He is incredibly powerful, and our attempt to recruit him failed. Here is his information for you to review, boss. Dr. Octopus. Upon hearing the name Dr. Octopus, Fang Ye suddenly felt a sense of familiarity, as if he had heard it somewhere before. Fang Ye took the information and realized that Dr. Octopus was a supervillain who appeared 3 days ago. He also remembered who Dr. Octopus was. Dr. Octopus's real name was Otto Octavius, born in New York State. His family background wasn't very good, as his father was a factory worker with a violent and alcoholic nature. He frequently abused his wife and son for no reason. Later, Dr. Octopus studied hard and aimed to become successful and rescue his suffering mother. He majored in physical science and became an outstanding nuclear physicist, specializing in atomic physics. Because he was always the top student, Dr. Octopus despised the idea of having an assistant, believing he could handle everything on his own. Later, he invented a set of mechanical tentacles that could lift up to 8 tons of weight with ease. The operation was simple, completely radiation-resistant, and incredibly powerful with unmatched accuracy. This allowed him to conduct numerous astonishing experiments and write countless new theories, earning him worldwide fame. However, recently, during an experiment, a pipeline burst, causing radiation to leak and trigger a massive explosion. Dr. Octopus miraculously survived, but 4 of the tentacles fused with his body. Additionally, the radiation altered his brain tissues. With the extra tentacles, Dr. Octopus's brain rearranged its neural pathways to fully control the tentacles according to his thoughts. In the original story, after becoming a supervillain, Dr. Octopus had his first successful battle. He beat Spider-Man to a pulp, and Peter Parker even considered giving up being Spider-Man. But so far, Spider-Man hadn't encountered Dr. Octopus, so no one knew his true strength. Yesterday, Max Dillon and his team of supervillains attempted to recruit Dr. Octopus, but he refused, and a massive battle ensued. Dr. Octopus proved to be incredibly powerful, easily defeating all the supervillains. Tomorrow, I will handle it personally. After pondering for a moment, Fang Ye decided to recruit Dr. Octopus personally. Dr. Octopus was indeed quite powerful, and if possible, Fang Ye wanted to recruit him. When they attacked S.H.I.E.L.D, he would be a valuable asset. Chapter 75, Recruitment. Keep a close eye on Dr. Octopus, don't lose track of him. Don't worry, boss. I already have someone following him. Fang Ye nodded and dismissed Max. Although Dr. Octopus was strong, he was just one person, and at most, he could provide some assistance in attacking S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D had been well established and had government support, and their technological capabilities were not to be underestimated. It's time to meet Tony. Fang Ye had another card in his hand, and that was Oscorp. Fang Ye planned to sell Oscorp to Stark Industries. He wouldn't ask for money or shares in return. What he wanted was the design blueprint for the reactor and the source code for the AI program, Jarvis. While Mystique had successfully infiltrated and stolen the design for the Iron Man armor, the reactor blueprint and Jarvis source code were proving to be more elusive. The reactor blueprint had been in Tony's mind all along, and as for the source code, it was almost impossible to steal it without shutting down and restarting Jarvis. Tony values the Iron Man armor greatly. I wonder if he'll agree to this. Fang Ye wasn't very confident about whether Tony would agree. If someone had offered Oscorp in exchange for the Hulk serum in the past, Fang Ye wouldn't have even given it a second thought. The Iron Man armor was Tony's forbidden area, and the likelihood of him agreeing was slim. But no matter what, Fang Ye had to give it a try. Fang Ye made a call and set up a meeting with Tony in the evening at a high-end cafe on 6th Avenue. As night fell, at the agreed-upon time, Fang Ye teleported directly to 6th Avenue and found Tony had already been waiting. Hey, Fang, you're late. You're the early one. Fang Ye smiled faintly and pointed to the brown clock on the wall of the private room. It was exactly 8 o'clock. Tony wasn't known for being punctual, and he had often stood Fang Ye up in the past. Well, today, I arrived early. Do you have something to talk to me about? Tony asked. Yes, Fang Ye nodded, not denying it. Tony probably had some knowledge of the birth of the Tesseract and might even know about the conflict between Fang Ye and S.H.I.E.L.D over it. Perhaps that was why Tony hadn't arrived late this time. He must have suspected that Fang Ye had something important to discuss. I plan to sell Oscorp to Stark Industries. Are you interested? Oscorp. It was impossible for Tony not to be interested, but Stark Industries' cash flow wasn't particularly abundant at the moment. Acquiring Oscorp might be a stretch for them financially. Fang Ye naturally knew the situation at Stark Industries, but he also believed that Tony would be tempted. Fang, you're also a shareholder of Stark Industries, so you should be aware of the company's current situation. Although I'm really tempted, our cash flow isn't sufficient at the moment. I know, but I don't want money, and I don't want shares. I just want 2 things. What are they? The reactor design blueprint and Jarvis source code. Tony hesitated. The value of Oscorp was undoubtedly higher than the design blueprint and source code, and the deal would definitely be in his favor. If Stark Industries acquired Oscorp, it would become one of the top 3 conglomerates in the United States, a crucial step for its future development. However, the Iron Man armor was Tony's forbidden zone, and he would never allow anyone to get their hands on it. So Tony was torn between the 2 options. In fact, rather than saying I want to sell Oscorp to Stark Industries, it's more accurate to say I want to sell it to you, because I plan to withdraw my investments from the United States, and Oscorp will be sold cheap to someone else. I'd much rather give the benefit to my only friend. Seeing Tony hesitate, Fang Ye was delighted because it meant there was hope. At least Tony didn't reject him outright. To increase his chances, Fang Ye played the emotional card, hoping to touch Tony's heart. Tony, I really need the Iron Man armor. If you consider me a friend, you should help me just this once. I promise the Iron Man technology won't leak out. Let me think about it. All right, take your time, and I'll wait for your answer. Fang Ye knew that going too far would be counterproductive. He had said what needed to be said, and now it was up to Tony to decide. They stopped discussing Oscorp and chatted about other topics instead. After an hour, Fang Ye and Tony parted ways, and Fang Ye teleported back. I hope Tony won't disappoint me. If he could obtain the reactor design blueprint and Jarvis source code, Fang Ye could create a team of Iron Man armors. That would make attacking S.H.I.E.L.D. much easier. Each Iron Man armor was costly to build, and most corporations couldn't afford to create a team of them. But Fang Ye lacked nothing except money. Since he couldn't take it with him when he left the Marvel world, he might as well use it where it was needed. The next day, Fang Ye summoned Electroman Max. Where is Dr. Octopus right now? He's in the Bronx. Fang Ye nodded and asked Max to lead the way. Max could transform into an elemental form, so he was naturally fast. In a moment, they arrived at the location in the Bronx. With Max as his guide, the 2 of them arrived at the entrance of an abandoned factory. Is Dr. Octopus here? Yes, boss. There's a basement under the factory that serves as Dr. Octopus's temporary laboratory, and he's down there now. Take me there. Sure. Entering the factory through a broken door, they arrived at the underground laboratory, where they indeed found Dr. Octopus. At this moment, Dr. Octopus seemed to be conducting some experiments. Who's there? Hello, Dr. Octopus. I'm Fang Ye. Fang Ye smiled slightly and paid no attention to the 4 menacing mechanical arms behind Dr. Octopus. Max closely followed behind Fang Ye, keeping a vigilant eye on Dr. Octopus to prevent him from suddenly attacking Fang Ye. Fang Ye. Yes, it's me. Dr. Octopus naturally recognized Fang Ye. He probably had some knowledge of Fang Ye after all. Over 90% of Americans were familiar with Fang Ye. As Fang Ye observed Dr. Octopus, he appeared to be short and slightly overweight compared to most Americans. His appearance was quite ordinary, and if it weren't for the 4 mechanical arms, he would have looked like an ordinary person. As Fang Ye was sizing him up, Dr. Octopus was also scrutinizing Fang Ye. In truth, he didn't know much about Fang Ye, only that he was the uncrowned king of the financial world. Dr. Octopus, Max should have told you. I'm here to invite you to join us again. I will support your research, and you should know that I'm not short of money. Chapter 76, Final Preparations. Dr. Octopus was in desperate need of money, to the point that he was even willing to rob a bank. If money could entice him, then it would be the best solution. However, it seemed that Dr. Octopus was not willing to be swayed. He coldly smiled, and his 4 mechanical tentacles waved menacingly behind him, looking terrifying. You want me to join? You'd better think twice before saying that. Max was startled and quickly moved, protecting Fang Ye behind him. At this moment, one of the mechanical tentacles shot up like a venomous snake, fiercely striking his chin. A single mechanical tentacle could easily lift 8 tons of weight. With such immense strength, what would happen if it struck an ordinary person? They would probably be turned into minced meat. Fortunately, Max's body was far from ordinary, and the surprise attack from the mechanical tentacle only made his head spin for a moment, without causing much harm. Max's body could transform into an elemental form, making him virtually immune to physical attacks. But in order to protect Fang Ye, he had no choice but to confront Dr. Octopus head-on. Max somersaulted in the air, dispelling the tremendous force acting on him, and landed gracefully. Know your place, Max said coldly, and a thick arc of electricity shot out towards Dr. Octopus nearby. In Max's view, it was an honor for Dr. Octopus that the boss himself came to invite him. But Dr. Octopus seemed ignorant of that fact, not only rudely refusing but also daring to attack the boss. Such behavior was simply unforgivable. Dr. Octopus blocked the arc of electricity with one of his tentacles while another directed the electricity into the ground. The remaining 2 tentacles then struck out, not only targeting Max but also including Fang Ye behind him. Die. Max's expression changed, and after a furious roar, electric currents spread all over his body. He opened his arms, and two massive arcs of electricity met the tentacles. The collision between the mechanical tentacles and the electricity resulted in a thunderous explosion. The shockwave spread out invisibly, instantly destroying everything in the underground laboratory. My experiments. Dr. Octopus's eyes turned red with anger as he glared at Max, wishing he could devour him alive. After his wife's death, Dr. Octopus' only mental support was to complete his research, even to the extent of robbing banks for it. Now that his underground lab was destroyed, how could he not be furious? With an enraged shout, Dr. Octopus unleashed his 4 mechanical tentacles, seemingly ready to crush Max and Fang Ye into pulp. Fang Ye remained calm as he had already activated his right brain's instinctive combat mode long before. Even if Max hadn't protected him just now, the tentacles wouldn't have been able to hit him. Max, step back. Fang Ye's figure rapidly expanded, his skin turned green, and in the blink of an eye, he transformed into the Green Giant, standing over 3 meters tall. Seeing the 4 mechanical tentacles sweeping towards him, Fang Ye took a step forward, his hand moving swiftly to grab the approaching tentacles. With a gentle force, Dr. Octopus was thrown away. Boom! The Green Giant's strength was immense, far beyond what the mechanical tentacles could match. Under the force of the pull, Dr. Octopus crashed heavily into the underground wall. If it weren't for the 4 mechanical tentacles protecting him, that hit would have been fatal. In terms of physical strength, Dr. Octopus was actually not much stronger than an ordinary person. His real power came from the 4 mechanical tentacles. After being thrown, Dr. Octopus got up, and once again, his 4 tentacles attacked. The Green Giant snorted coldly. He reached out and grabbed one of the mechanical tentacles. At the same time, the other 3 tentacles struck him forcefully. But what could mere mechanical tentacles do against the Green Giant? Dr. Octopus was about to be pleased, but his expression changed when he saw that the attacks from the mechanical tentacles hadn't caused any harm to the Green Giant. How could he not be shocked when he knew the power of the mechanical tentacles better than anyone else? But looking at the calm expression on the Green Giant's face, it was evident that the attacks of the mechanical tentacles had no effect on him at all. How could Dr. Octopus not be amazed? How is this possible? Time for me to take action. The corners of the Green Giant's mouth curled into a cold smile. He suddenly exerted force with his hands, and the mechanical tentacle in his grip cracked as if it couldn't bear the weight. At the same time, Dr. Octopus, under the pull of the Green Giant's force, involuntarily flew towards him and was grabbed by the neck. Now the Green Giant only needed to exert a little force, and he could easily snap Dr. Octopus' neck. Surrender or die. I surrender. The Green Giant loosened his grip on Dr. Octopus' neck, returned to his normal form, and only had his expensive clothes left, with his transformation having torn the rest. Fang Ye glanced at Dr. Octopus and calmly said, "My promise still stands. I can support your research to the greatest extent." Thank you, boss. Although Dr. Octopus had his mechanical tentacles to protect him, the force of the Green Giant was too powerful, and he was not feeling well now. Fang Ye nodded lightly and turned his gaze to Electroman Max. "The rest is up to you." "Yes." Having said that, Fang Ye teleported away. He wasn't worried about whether Dr. Octopus truly surrendered or not. If Dr. Octopus dared to betray him, Fang Ye wouldn't mind tearing him apart. 3 days passed, and during this time, Fang Ye had been waiting for Tony's response. Today, Tony finally made a decision and arranged to meet Fang Ye in a cafe. In a private room of the cafe on 6th Avenue. "Tony, have you made your decision?" After meeting Tony, Fang Ye straightforwardly asked. But today, Tony seemed a bit different, not as nonchalant as usual. "Yeah, I have a question for you, and I hope you'll answer me honestly." "Go ahead and ask." "What do you need the reactor design blueprint and Jarvis source code for?" "To attack S.H.I.E.L.D. and retrieve the Tesseract." Fang Ye's smile disappeared from his face. He didn't hide anything from Tony because there was no way to hide it. Tony seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and showed a slight smile. "In fact, S.H.I.E.L.D. approached me too. They seem very interested in the Iron Man armor, but I refused." "Oh." Fang Ye nodded lightly and waited for Tony to continue. "I agreed to trade Oscorp with the Jarvis source code and the reactor design blueprint. Rather than giving the reactor to the S.H.I.E.L.D., Tony was more willing to give it to his friend. Also, Tony knew Fang Ye for a very long time and believed that Fang Ye will never leak the blueprint to anyone." "Thank you." Fang Ye's gratitude was sincere because everyone knew that Tony designed the Iron Man armor, and if Fang Ye used it to attack S.H.I.E.L.D., Tony would undoubtedly be implicated. "It might cause some trouble, but I'll handle it. But I won't be able to help you if you attack S.H.I.E.L.D. Your agreement to the trade is the greatest help I could ask for." Attacking S.H.I.E.L.D meant breaking ties with the US government. Tony wouldn't do that unless his head got messed up. Afterward, the two chatted for a while before parting ways. After obtaining the source code and design blueprint, Fang Ye instantly teleported to his underground base on a private island in Asia and handed them over to the scientists, tasking them to produce 50 Iron Man armors within a month. With 50 of them, attacking S.H.I.E.L.D would be a piece of cake. Chapter 77, Confrontation. On an uninhabited island in Asia, an invisible wave of ripples appeared in the void, and two figures suddenly appeared as if walking out of nothingness. The two who arrived through instant teleportation were none other than Fang Ye and Deadpool. It had been 10 days since they obtained the source code and design drawings. This time, Fang Ye teleported here specifically to assess the situation. Due to the limitations of Fang Ye's teleportation ability, he could only teleport within a maximum distance of 100 kilometers. Therefore, he had to bring Deadpool along, as Deadpool's teleportation belt had no such restrictions. He could teleport from one end of the Earth to the other as long as he knew the location. Dr. William, how many sets of iron battle armor have you produced? In the underground base of a private island, in the conference hall, Fang Ye sat at the head of the table, while scientists led by Dr. William sat on both sides, most of them being weapons manufacturing experts. Dr. William showed a respectful expression and introduced the situation to Fang Ye. Boss, currently, we have produced 12 sets of battle armor. In the beginning, the speed of production was slow due to lack of proficiency, but now the production speed has increased significantly. We are confident that we will complete the task within a month. We don't have much time left. 12 sets will have to do. Prepare enough ammunition for the battle armor immediately. I want to take them with me right away. Ever since the UI fund withdrew from the United States, it had become an empty shell, but the flow of tens of trillions of dollars couldn't go unnoticed. It was just a matter of time before it was discovered. Despite Fang Ye's efforts to cover his tracks, the United States government had already taken notice. So, Fang Ye had no time left, he had to strike first before S.H.I.E.L.D could react. Yes, Dr. William knew what Fang Ye was planning to do. It's worth mentioning that the special metal needed to activate the spacetime tunnel had been obtained from Dr. Heinrich a month ago. Dr. William had made all the necessary preparations, and now they only needed to retrieve the Tesseract and attempt to open the spacetime tunnel. Fang Ye had learned from Dr. William how to use the Tesseract to open the spacetime tunnel. It was a precautionary measure, as no one could guarantee a successful return to the real world on the first attempt. Even if they didn't succeed in returning to the real world this time, as long as they had the Tesseract in hand, Fang Ye could still travel between worlds. Shortly after, the 12 sets of iron battle armor were equipped with sufficient ammunition and the reactors were ready. Wilson, take these battle armors back. Yes. Deadpool nodded in response and teleported the 12 sets of battle armor back to the United States. In a moment, all 12 sets disappeared from the island. Before parting ways, Fang Ye looked at Dr. William and instructed him, stop production of the iron battle armor for now. Just focus on being prepared. As soon as I retrieve the Tesseract, we will immediately attempt to open the spacetime tunnel. Yes. A trace of excitement flashed in Dr. William's eyes. He had long looked forward to the Tesseract. For a scientist specializing in space research, what could be more exciting than studying the legendary Tesseract? Moreover, opening the spacetime tunnel would be the most magnificent feat in history. Fang Ye nodded and, along with Deadpool, teleported away. After returning to the UI tower, Fang Ye immediately gathered his team and had them familiarize themselves with the iron battle armor. The following night, a lightning bolt resembling a long dragon appeared in the sky, and heavy rain poured down from the sky like a collapsing canopy. In front of the S.H.I.E.L.D building, heavy rain poured down. Occasional sirens could be heard amidst the pouring rain as armored vehicles arrived and parked along the street in front of the S.H.I.E.L.D building. On the other side of the street, over 100 figures began to appear. Leading them was a young Asian man, holding a black umbrella and wearing black clothes with gold-rimmed glasses, giving him an elegant appearance. Fang Ye looked up, undeterred by the drizzling rain, and pointed at the soldiers. I don't want to see them again. Understood. Max responded lightly and handed an umbrella to a mutant standing beside him. It was his honor to hold the umbrella for Fang Ye. Dozens of electric arcs suddenly appeared, and the soldiers didn't even have time to react before they fell one by one. At this moment, dozens of people walked out of the S.H.I.E.L.D building. Many of them were familiar faces to Fang Ye, but what surprised him was seeing Black Widow, Natasha, though he didn't see Hawkeye. Fang Ye, what do you think you're doing? Do you know what it means to attack S.H.I.E.L.D? Do you want to have no place to stand in the United States? Ha! Fang Ye sneered, not bothering to pay attention to him, and his gaze turned to Phoenix and Dr. Banner. He narrowed his eyes, these two were his real enemies? After Dr. Banner transformed, there was no need to say more. Although Fang Ye hadn't fought with Phoenix, he feared her power to decompose matter the most. Fang Ye. Natasha, standing beside Nick Fury, gritted her teeth and called out his name. Fang Ye smiled lightly and met her gaze. Miss Natasha, I'm glad to see you're still alive. Yeah? Are you disappointed that you didn't kill me? But too bad for Hawkeye, today, I will make you pay. Natasha's expression was icy cold, and her eyes flickered with killing intent. If there was anyone she hated the most in her life, it was undoubtedly Fang Ye. Fang Ye didn't take Natasha's words to heart. Suddenly, Fang Ye's gaze froze. In the crowd of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, he saw a familiar figure. It was Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Peter, are you going to oppose me too? Peter Parker hadn't expected Fang Ye to recognize him at a glance, and he was slightly surprised. Mr. Fang Ye, please stop. I don't want to see anyone else getting hurt. Otherwise, I will do my best to stop you. Haha. Fang Ye didn't say much, just shook his head. He was determined to obtain the Tesseract. As for Peter Parker, Fang Ye was grateful to him because he knew Peter's personality. If he openly helped him, Peter might not accept it. So, Fang Ye secretly arranged a job for his aunt and even talked to the editor-in-chief of the newspaper. As a result, Peter Parker was now in a managerial position at the newspaper. Nick Fury looked at Fang Ye and spoke in a cold voice. Fang Ye, are you really throwing caution to the wind? Enough with the nonsense. I believe you already know about the UI funds withdrawal. Otherwise, you wouldn't have prepared so much today. Do you think I care about the US government now? The Tesseract belongs to the United States. Joke? The Tesseract was never an Earth product. What right do you have to claim it belongs to the United States? Besides, do you think S.H.I.E.L.D. can keep the Tesseract safe? I'm afraid the Asgardians and the Chitauri have long been eyeing it. Perhaps it won't be long before you witness the Chitauri invading Earth. The expressions of the people present changed, and Fang Ye's words clearly shook them. Although they didn't know how Fang Ye knew all this, he didn't look like he was lying. Could it be true that aliens were going to invade Earth? Will you hand over the Tesseract or not? I'll repeat it once again, the Tesseract belongs to the United States. Currently, S.H.I.E.L.D. was using the Tesseract to research new energy weapons, and Nick Fury would never give it up no matter what. Fang Ye's expression turned cold, and he chuckled. Then let's fight. This time, either you die or I perish. Attack! Fang Ye shouted, taking a step forward, and his body rapidly grew in size. After transforming into the Green Giant, he charged toward the crowd from S.H.I.E.L.D. Chapter 78, Battle with the Hulk. Kill. With a fierce shout, Fang Ye took the initiative to attack. Taking large strides, his body visibly expanded at a rapid pace. Muscles surged, and his skin turned green. After his clothes were torn apart, his ferocious and coiled muscles were revealed. His body stopped growing when he reached over 3 meters tall. Roar. Fang Ye opened his mouth and let out a roar, spreading invisible sound waves that hit the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. first. Fang Ye's green eyes were full of murderous intent as he looked at Nick Fury, showing no trace of emotion, only negative emotions. Facing him, everyone couldn't help but shudder. Fang Ye leaped and suddenly jumped into the air. His target was Nick Fury. He wanted to tear him apart to settle his grudges. You thief! A voice full of anger suddenly came from the crowd of S.H.I.E.L.D. Dr. Banner pushed through the crowd, cursing Fang Ye as a thief. After a furious roar, he rapidly expanded and transformed into the Hulk. Dr. Banner had always been holding a grudge against Fang Ye for stealing his serum. Every time he saw Fang Ye, an unnamed fury surged in his heart. Roar. After transforming, the Hulk took control of his body. When he saw Fang Ye, the Hulk let out a thunderous roar and rushed towards him. Fool. Fang Ye sneered coldly and faced the charging Hulk. Their huge fists collided, and an invisible shockwave spread out, knocking nearby people off their feet. Before the Hulk could attack again, Fang Ye instantly teleported behind him, grabbing his shoulder and kneeing him fiercely in the lower back. Then, he kicked the Hulk hundreds of meters away. Boom! The Hulk flew hundreds of meters, knocking down numerous buildings before being buried under the rubble. Fang Ye didn't pursue his advantage. Instead, he looked up at the sky. The real show is about to begin. Swooshing sounds came from above, and 12 golden and red figures appeared. Nick Fury looked up, his expression changing slightly. He couldn't help but exclaim, Iron Battle Armors. Nick Fury was familiar with the Iron Battle Armors. S.H.I.E.L.D. had made attempts to obtain them, but Tony Stark had rejected them no matter what conditions were offered. The 12 golden and red figures were none other than Fang Ye's Iron Battle Team. Fang Ye had assigned them the task of engaging Phoenix. To prevent Phoenix from using her matter decomposition ability, they only attacked her from a distance in the sky, keeping a safe distance from her. Although Phoenix could also fly, she couldn't match the speed of the Iron Battle Armors, leaving her unable to catch up. Roar. The Hulk climbed out of the rubble and, once again, charged towards Fang Ye. But before the Hulk could reach him, Fang Ye teleported beside him and punched him, sending him flying again. Having teleportation abilities, the Hulk was indeed terrifying. In their clash, the Hulk was completely suppressed and could only passively endure Fang Ye's attacks. The only thing that troubled Fang Ye was that the Hulk was virtually indestructible, he couldn't kill him. As time passed, the Hulk's strength only grew stronger. Furthermore, as the Hulk's strength increased, so did his defense, and the damage Fang Ye inflicted on him became increasingly insignificant. Hulk, attack! The Hulk roared again, getting up after being hit and charging at Fang Ye once more. You fool! Fang Ye coldly cursed and didn't care if the Hulk could understand. He turned and ran in another direction. Guided by Fang Ye, the Hulk followed closely. They gradually moved away from the area where S.H.I.E.L.D was located. After a few minutes, they were far away, and when it was clear the Hulk couldn't return on his own, Fang Ye instantly teleported away. Roar! The Hulk looked around in confusion, roaring in anger, but he couldn't find Fang Ye's figure. Like a madman, the Hulk rampaged, destroying buildings, causing pedestrians to scream in fear, and killing dozens of people in a short period of time. However, none of this had anything to do with Fang Ye. S.H.I.E.L.D would naturally clean up the mess. When Fang Ye returned to the front of the S.H.I.E.L.D building again, the battle between the two sides was intense. With the Iron Battle team distracting Phoenix, the people from S.H.I.E.L.D were temporarily gaining the upper hand, leaving S.H.I.E.L.D struggling to catch their breath. Watch out! Seeing Fang Ye teleporting back, Nick Fury's heart sank. The only one who could resist Fang Ye at the scene was Phoenix, but unfortunately, she was being held back by the Iron Battle team. Nick Fury. Fang Ye looked around, and his gaze finally settled on Nick Fury. He walked towards him with big steps. Watch out! Protect the director. Natasha, who had been standing by Nick Fury's side, quickly drew her gun and fired. Other agents also drew their guns and shot at Fang Ye. Unfortunately, the bullets hitting Fang Ye were as ineffective as scratching an itch. Nick Fury's heart sank, but he maintained a calm expression and retreated under the protection of the agents. Can you run away? Fang Ye teleported directly to Nick Fury, and with a sweep of his hand, the agents were knocked away, and with a few slaps, they turned into lumps of meat sauce. Feeling his life threatened, Nick Fury's expression finally changed. Your Excellency Phoenix. No one can save you. Fang Ye roared and punched towards Nick Fury. If this punch landed, Nick Fury would undoubtedly become a lump of meat sauce. Suddenly, Fang Ye felt a sharp pain in his head, as if a force was trying to invade his mind. Roar! Fang Ye let out a roar, swinging his fist at Nick Fury, but he hesitated for a moment. Natasha saw this and quickly protected Nick Fury as they stepped back. Fang Ye instantly activated his mental shielding ability, dispelling the force trying to invade his mind. Seeing Nick Fury run away, Fang Ye didn't chase after him. Instead, he turned and looked behind him. There, a woman dressed in a tight black outfit with an extremely elegant temperament was slowly walking towards them. Phoenix. Fang Ye squinted his eyes. The mental power he had just encountered was extremely powerful, stronger than Professor X's. When Professor X invaded Fang Ye's mind, it only caused a slight headache. However, the mental power he felt just now made him experience a sharp pain. This showed just how powerful Phoenix's mental abilities were. She was indeed not to be underestimated, even compared to Professor X and Magneto. So, you're Fang Ye. I promised someone that I would kill you. Phoenix didn't immediately attack. Instead, she observed Fang Ye with interest. In fact, she didn't really hate Fang Ye. On the contrary, Professor X had imprisoned her in the past, and she had no goodwill towards him. Helping Professor X and Cyclops take revenge was solely a requirement from her other personality. You can try. Fang Ye's lips curled into a sinister smile. Although he felt wary of Phoenix, it didn't mean he was afraid of her. In the original movie, Wolverine was able to endure for a while under Phoenix's matter decomposition ability and eventually killed Dark Phoenix. Not to mention the Hulk, who had stronger defenses and even more terrifying regenerative abilities. The only thing Fang Ye worried about was whether his artifact, the Cosmic Briefs, could withstand the matter decomposition ability. At this moment, the Iron Battle team caught up, and Fang Ye waved his hand, signaling them to step back. Joining the battle, the people from S.H.I.E.L.D temporarily gained the upper hand, suppressing the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, making it difficult for them to catch their breath. Although the early-stage Iron Battle armors weren't as powerful as the later ones, their initial strength couldn't be underestimated. Phoenix paid no attention to them. She had joined forces with S.H.I.E.L.D mainly to fulfill her other personality's wish, to let the other personality willingly merge with her. As for the heavy casualties suffered by S.H.I.E.L.D, it had nothing to do with her. Chapter 79, miscalculated by one step. Natasha and Nick Fury did not go far after escaping from Fang Ye's attack. Instead, they took refuge behind Phoenix. Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D, couldn't become a deserter while others were still fighting. Besides, it wasn't safe to go far away because Fang Ye could teleport. The safest place for them at the moment was undoubtedly staying by Phoenix's side, since among the superheroes present, only Phoenix could rival Fang Ye. Just as tension filled the air, and the battle was about to break out, a figure walked out from the entrance of the S.H.I.E.L.D building. The person was dressed in a black outfit, holding a silver suitcase in the left hand and gripping a black longbow in the right. Barton, why did you come out? Weren't you supposed to guard something? Seeing Hawkeye walking out, especially with a silver suitcase in his hand, Nick Fury's face changed slightly, and he suddenly had a bad premonition. Hawkeye had no expression and unexpectedly ignored Nick Fury. He quickly walked to Fang Ye's side and respectfully handed over the suitcase. Boss, mission accomplished. Very good. You didn't disappoint me. A hint of joy flashed in Fang Ye's eyes as he opened the suitcase and saw the Tesseract inside. Although Nick Fury had anticipated it, he truly lost all hope when he saw that Hawkeye had indeed brought the Tesseract to Fang Ye. Why? Natasha questioned Hawkeye with disbelief in her eyes. Do you know Fang Ye almost killed us back then? Hawkeye didn't answer her, but a trace of guilt flashed in his eyes. Fang Ye noticed this and sneered, his gaze mocking Natasha. Do you think if I hadn't shown mercy back then, would Hawkeye have survived my punch? Thank you for sparing me back then. Hawkeye spoke timely. Fang Ye glanced coldly at him. If it weren't for Hawkeye bringing the Tesseract as an accomplishment, Fang Ye would have killed him long ago. In the past year, Fang Ye had controlled Hawkeye using rather unsightly means, but it was quite effective. The Marvel Universe was chaotic, not just in the movie version, but even in the comics. There were several versions or parallel universes. In the real world, Fang Ye had only watched the movies, and he vaguely remembered that Hawkeye had a wife and 3 children. After some investigation, he indeed found the information. At the time, Hawkeye's wife was pregnant, and through her, Fang Ye controlled Hawkeye. Perhaps because his pursuit of Natasha was unsuccessful, Hawkeye married? However, Hawkeye was not content to be controlled. When Fang Ye was ambushed by Hydra, S.H.I.E.L.D must have received the news in advance, or it wouldn't have been so coincidental that they intercepted him along his route. But Hawkeye did not inform Fang Ye, obviously hoping to get rid of Fang Ye with the help of Hydra, thereby breaking free from Fang Ye's control. If S.H.I.E.L.D had truly hidden the Tesseract, it would have been difficult for Fang Ye to find it. But the situation turned out to be so coincidental that Nick Fury had sent Hawkeye to guard the Tesseract. Nick Fury took a deep breath and stepped forward, making a proposal. Mr. Fang, as long as you return the Tesseract, I can promise not to pursue your attack on S.H.I.E.L.D. Furthermore, if we both end up seriously injured, it will only benefit other forces. I hope you'll consider it. Are you joking? Are you stupid, or do you think I'm stupid? Fang Ye sneered with sarcasm in his words. Then he continued, as for other forces taking advantage of our situation, you don't have to worry about it. Hellfire and the others are busy fighting for power, and they have no time to care about us. If Hydra dares to cause trouble, I wouldn't mind wiping them out and taking revenge for the ambush they set up. Having decided to attack S.H.I.E.L.D, Fang Ye had already made arrangements in advance. Otherwise, as Nick Fury said, if they both ended up seriously injured and other forces took advantage of the situation, Fang Ye would be playing into someone else's hands. In Hellfire, Fang Ye had his own pieces on the board. Through not-so-clever manipulation, the Hellfire Club was now too preoccupied with internal power struggles to bother with them. As for Hydra, Fang Ye couldn't do much. They were too good at hiding. If Hydra didn't reveal themselves, no one could uncover them. Fang Ye could only remain vigilant in secret. Giggle, are you done talking? Phoenix suddenly chuckled coldly. Wilson. Fang Ye had been keeping an eye on Phoenix and immediately called out Deadpool's name when he saw that Phoenix seemed ready to act. Deadpool appeared beside Fang Ye in a flash, picking up the silver suitcase and preparing to teleport away. Fang Ye didn't let Deadpool participate in the main battle and kept him hidden, waiting for this moment. Lady Phoenix, you can't let him take the Tesseract. In fact, Nick Fury didn't need to remind her. As soon as Deadpool appeared, Phoenix sensed his presence. An invisible storm swept through, and everything in its path disintegrated. Chapter 80, Matter Decomposition Ability. Phoenix's eyes sparkled with cold light. Her black skin-tight suit moved without wind as an invisible storm gathered, sweeping through everything in its path and reducing all matter to nothingness. Roar. Fang Ye took a deep breath, stepped forward, and let out a thunderous roar. Boom. The intangible and immaterial sound waves spread and collided with the incoming storm. The earth trembled violently, and the air burst with a muffled sound. For a moment, a massive shockwave radiated in all directions. Facing the spreading shockwave, Fang Ye involuntarily took several steps back, and the others were even worse off. Natasha and Nick Fury, who were hiding behind Phoenix, were directly swept away by the shockwave. Natasha's constitution was strong enough to avoid serious injuries, but Nick Fury was not so lucky. He let out a miserable cry in midair and fell unconscious with his head tilted to the side. Hawkeye and Deadpool, who were also hiding behind Fang Ye, naturally couldn't escape either. Hawkeye, in particular, suffered severe injuries and fell to the ground unable to get up. Sound waves were not matter, and Phoenix's power could only decompose matter. It was the only means Fang Ye had at the moment to counter her matter decomposition ability. However, when he turned around, anger surged in his heart. This was because Deadpool had obtained the Tesseract but had yet to teleport away with it. Wilson, what are you waiting for? Boss, I can't teleport with the Tesseract. Deadpool explained with a bitter smile. It wasn't that Deadpool didn't want to leave. Just now, he tried to teleport with the Tesseract, but found that his teleportation belt was malfunctioning. Fang Ye frowned upon hearing this. He hadn't expected any mistakes in the final critical moment. He hadn't considered that the Tesseract couldn't be teleported away. Don't underestimate this small mistake. If not handled properly, it could lead to failure. In Fang Ye's plan, once they got the Tesseract, Deadpool was supposed to teleport away immediately. But since teleportation wasn't possible now, the only option was to escape with the Tesseract. However, they were still in the United States, and it wouldn't be easy to escape. Once they were surrounded by large-scale military forces, things would get out of control. However, Fang Ye quickly made a decision and ordered Deadpool, give the Tesseract to the Iron Steel team and let them escort it back to the island base. Yes. Deadpool didn't dare to delay and quickly contacted the Iron Steel team. The members of the Iron Steel team, except for the newly added members, were all former super soldiers. Want to leave? Leave it to me. Phoenix suddenly shouted, and a red light flashed in her eyes as her mighty psychic power spread, invading Deadpool's mind in an attempt to control him. But suddenly, Phoenix let out an exclamation, as if she had encountered something unimaginable. It turned out that she found that her psychic power had no effect on Deadpool at all. In fact, few people knew that Deadpool not only possessed an immortal body, but this immortality also made him immune to any mental attacks. In the Marvel Universe, the big boss Thanos, upon learning that Deadpool had fallen in love with his beloved death goddess, cursed Deadpool, making him unable to die so that he could never see the goddess of death. Fang Ye was also curious about this and had asked Deadpool about it in private, but Deadpool just smiled and didn't say anything. Fang Ye didn't continue to pry into his private matters. However, Fang Ye knew that Deadpool could ignore any mental attacks. If anyone on Earth could compare in mental defense with Fang Ye, it would undoubtedly be Deadpool. It was precisely because of this that Fang Ye entrusted him with the important task of escorting the Tesseract. Fang Ye had been prepared for this situation. After all, Phoenix's psychic power was difficult to defend against, and if it were someone else, they would have been controlled long ago. Perhaps realizing that her psychic power was useless against Deadpool, Phoenix snorted coldly and then displayed her matter decomposition ability. However, whether it was the Green Giant or Deadpool's immortality, the matter decomposition ability couldn't kill them in a short period of time. As for whether it could truly kill them, no one knew the answer because it had never been tested. But the matter decomposition ability was undoubtedly extremely powerful. At least, Fang Ye had witnessed it as the most terrifying ability among mutants. Go! Fang Ye turned around and yelled at Deadpool, disregarding the damage caused by the matter decomposition ability to his body. He roared and punched Phoenix. Seeing the opportunity, Deadpool quickly flew backward while holding the Tesseract. At this time, the Iron Steel team had arrived. They took the Tesseract and flew into the sky, disappearing in an instant. Not good. Natasha supported Nick Fury and hid behind a building on the opposite side of the street. Suddenly, she saw the Iron Steel team arriving, taking the Tesseract and disappearing into the sky. Her heart sank. Glancing at the unconscious Nick Fury, Natasha picked up a small communication device from her chest. I'm Natasha. The director has ordered the deployment of fighter jets to intercept the Iron Steel team. After a while, dozens of fighter jets flew by from the high altitude, chasing after the Iron Steel team. However, Natasha knew very well that the Iron Steel armor's flight speed was extremely fast, and its combat power was also formidable. The chances of the fighter jets retrieving the Tesseract were not very high. But now, all they could do was their best and leave the rest to fate. Seeing the Tesseract taken away, Fang Ye's heart inexplicably relaxed. His cold gaze was fixed on Phoenix, as Shulong had met his end at her hands. Roar! Fang Ye's veins surged, and meridians appeared on the surface of his skin, resembling worms wriggling beneath his skin. The matter decomposition ability was rapidly decomposing Fang Ye's body, but the Green Giant's terrifying regenerative power was also quickly repairing him. At least for a short time, Phoenix couldn't decompose Fang Ye. Phoenix was in the center of the intangible storm, and it was extremely difficult for Fang Ye to get close. Moreover, the closer he got to Phoenix, the faster his body decomposed. However, the green giant's regenerative power didn't disappoint Fang Ye. After experiencing countless difficulties, he finally reached the center of the intangible storm and approached Phoenix. He roared in anger and struck out with his fist. Sensing the danger, Phoenix quickly flew up to the sky. She had learned from S.H.I.E.L.D's intelligence that the green giant couldn't fly. Unfortunately, she forgot that although the green giant couldn't fly, his jumping power was terrifying. Just as she flew into the sky, Fang Ye stumped on the ground and instantly appeared beside Phoenix. Roar! Grabbing Phoenix's leg, he exerted force and threw her down. Then, Phoenix's figure, like a falling meteor, turned into a streak of light that tore through the void and plummeted toward the ground.